Stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thanks, Animal.
Okay, I need a motion to adopt the August 20th amended agenda.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Public tax hearing, set rate tax for 2020. At this time, I do hereby declare a public hearing open for the purpose of hearing comments from any citizens regarding the property tax rates for 2020-2021 as proposed to be set by this Board of Education. Anybody here want to comment? There's not many here. Hearing no comments, I hereby declare the public hearing closed. If you want to bring any, everything stays the same, right? All right.
And I know there was a little bit of concern real quickly that assessed valuation would jump significantly, and it did not. If you look at the numbers, there was an increase, but nothing significant.
Either, so we'll move on to consent agenda items.
We didn't make a motion to accept the tax rate.
Oh, okay, yeah, we need to
Sorry.
have, I guess.
I'll make
Got
a
G-Bo, with a second.
I'll second.
Dave, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, moving on to the consent agenda items. Everybody,
To adjourn.
questions?
Could be adjourned from the tax rate hearing.
Oh, you gotta do a special adjournment.
Don't we? Yeah, we haven't listened.
Okay, I need a motion to adjourn from the special tax rate hearing.
Second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Now we'll do the consent agenda.
There we go.
Any questions on anybody before we do this as a slate?
Well, I got a question, seen on the consent agenda. Get to here. It's our minutes from our Unitech Career Center,
Mhm.
and it states down here, Mr. Colley had to discuss about us not having a grant, losing a grant. And seemed kind of something that was definitely overlooked somewhere.
Yeah. So it's something that Mr. Cullen and I have been working very hard on. It was brought to our attention immediately. I reached out to the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education to look into what happened. There are two pieces to that. There is a compliance plan and there is a budget application. So it's two steps. One step happens in February, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Cullen. One step happens in June. Our district did not submit the steps that happened in February. And in talking with DESE, they accept those on a turned-in basis. So even if we turned it in late, the chances we wouldn't have gotten money. The minute that Jeff told me, I immediately reached out to DESE, looked for alternative funding sources. I reached out to, I believe it was 6 different departments. Is that right, Jeff?
6, and I think we've already contacted. I wrote 2 additional grants. We received those. They're obviously much smaller grants because it's late in this funding year, but we received information today that on the culinary arts fax grant, they approved that for about $13,500, so we'll get half that. That's a matching grant. And then the health services, which was the one we really kind of needed right now, they only approved that for about $3,500. But I did talk to them today, and they're going to let me do a supplemental one on there, so we may be able to get some additional money. It won't be anytime real soon, but there'll be some available. And I think you had one other that responded.
Correct.
And it was
Information technology.
Technology. And we're getting numbers together from Dave Booyer, who is trying to get some curriculum stuff added at Unitech, and he should have me those numbers tomorrow, so we'll get that filled out. And those are short grants that I can do them in a day's time if the phone's not ringing off the hook. We need an unlisted number.
And we recognize this is something that, looking at it, it was literally a button that was not submitted, and we went back and, Jeff and I talked in detail about his program should have the authority to submit it. In this case, it could have been submitted by our office, which is Dave Schoenbeck, or Larry Kekek, and neither one hit the submit button. And so that is about a 68-32 reimbursement, where we're looking at 50-50 reimbursement now.
Well, it seems to be.
So what has been done in the past? Who submitted it in the past?
So both parties. So the last 3 years, Dave has submitted the first part, and then Larry submitted the second part. There is an email from Larry saying he'll take care of it, and then when I spoke to Desi, I have an email from them saying that they think Larry overlooked it on accident. And so for us, we just need to make sure that by February 20th, the end of February, every single year, we have to submit the compliance plan, because the compliance plan is where they give you all your funds. The budget is just where you justify where you're spending it.
Okay, so what is the amount of money? That 100 to 200,000 is a pretty wide range. What is the approximate amount of money that we just lost because of this mistake?
So we would have had 76,000. We have 76,000 in our budget to go towards that already. So it would have been at 76 would have been 1/3 of what we're eligible to do. So around $166,000 to $200,000, depending on what they turn in, line item by line item.
That's pretty good.
So where are we going to get that money?
Well, that is not something we count on every year. In fact, Jeff, did I say 4 years ago we didn't submit one either as a district? We
I
chose
think
not to.
the last 3 years we've submitted and received it. 4 years ago, I don't think that it
They chose
was-
not to for whatever reason.
But have we budgeted for that?
We have
money
not.
in
So it's
there?
not like, so they have made requests for those funds, but it's not like our budget reflects all of those expenses. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense, but it sure is a big hit.
Well, did anybody talk to Larry, or did anybody claim responsibility for it?
So meeting with Dave has acknowledged it. Yes, the last 2 years, he gets an email from the previous counselor that said, would you submit this for me? I spoke to the counselor at Unitech. She said she called Dave, and Dave said, hey, I don't do that. And she immediately went to Larry. And so, we talked, and we decided that calling Larry, we did
That's
not
what the counselor
feel.
told me as well.
Yeah, and we did not feel like calling Larry would be effective or productive, so we chose not to.
You mean for tonight? Calling him in here for tonight?
No, just we have not spoke to Larry because we didn't feel like that would be productive.
I did speak to him because he called
Sorry.
me. He called me and asked about it, and this has just been a couple of days ago.
Okay.
And his response was that in the past, the counselor has uploaded to EPEGs, which is what we did, and that he said that it was not his responsibility to do that. Like you said earlier, there was no sense in being confrontational about it. It was over. We didn't get it, and I know on the 21st, and I shared this with Dr. Levy and with Ms. Bachman, on the 21st of February, Desi sent a reminder to Mr. Kekak, and not just to Mr. Kekak, but to numerous directors, stating that this is a hard deadline. This year, it was actually the 29th because it was a leap year. It was a hard deadline on the 29th, and he said that he forwarded that on to the main office, is what he told me. So I don't have any I don't have any proof of that. That's just what he told me recently. So
So are we gonna be able to operate without difficulty?
So those funds are usually allocated for new machinery. So every year they ask for different items that maybe they can't afford in their traditional budget. And help me, Jeff, if
that's
I'm wrong.
correct.
And so I don't want to say a wish list, it's a needs list. And then every year that needs list is funded as well as it can be through those funds. And so for us, with 50-50, if we were able to find grant funds for the amount we have budgeted, we would still come in short some, but we would be at least double what we have budgeted and help some on the list.
In speaking to staff members, I'll use construction as an example. One of the things under certain enhancement grants, the CTE grants that Dr. Levy's called on that I've been writing recently, they don't allow for the enhancement, or the CTE grants do not allow for items that you can use one time. They're disposable items. So in talking to my construction technology teacher, he said, you know what, I can do without a lot of that stuff, but I can't do without certain things. You know, even a better example is we had a paint simulator, which was a very expensive item in the auto body. And that gentleman's comment to me was, I can do without that for a year, can't go without paint. You know, so yeah, there are some things in there that'll be difficult to make it without, but the bigger items we can sit on for a year. We'll make do. There will be some items in there that'll be tough pill to swallow. You can only use a 2x4. You build an 8-foot wall one time, next time you gotta build a 7-foot wall because you cut the ends off. So they understand that. The staff's been very understanding of it, and I've filled them in at a meeting this week and told them exactly where we are, and they're out there looking, and they're scrounging up things, and we're doing the best we can with it.
So that would have paid for materials too.
Yeah, a lot of times those grants are written, and they're written as a package. So you may have a construction material package, because it won't pay for any item that's under $200. So let's say you need to buy a saw that's $190. If you don't put that in a package with other items, you can't purchase that. So what happens is some of your disposable materials are included in that package. So that's where you lose out on those.
I got a question. Would any of those items qualify under this bond issue?
So the bond, I'm not sure, when Jeff and I met, he had been forwarding me programs, pieces that could fall under CARES money, so we can make up some of those pieces, especially technology related.
I think Brad's gonna have some information, good news, and a little all about our bond money, so.
Absolutely.
There's gonna be, but some of those items could actually fall under improvement or
So did we already get CARES money for that, or is this something you're gonna submit down the line?
So we have received partial CARES money, and we plan to submit another grant as well. And so I had submitted our first one already, but his is already on our second one. And he sent me the invoice and everything.
We've got, there are some curriculum-related things that are going to be a big help if we go virtual.
Yep.
That we can cover, I think, under some of that CARES money.
Absolutely.
And some
I'm
of
not
that.
talking about CARES money, I'm talking about the bond money.
Right.
Okay.
Because if there's an improvement to the facility, wouldn't it qualify?
Facilities improvement would qualify for.
I don't know
those
what items you're talking about, but.
Well, these folks came in and met with me a month or two ago, and we went through the building, and obviously we've got some security concerns up there, probably the greatest security concerns in the district because it's one of the older buildings. So we talked about some different things that they could do to the entryway and some things like that. Now, beyond that, what we can do supply-wise within that bond issue, I don't know. That's
Equipment, I know you probably, I could see being part of that. I don't know about supplies.
The equipment, because we do have written into the bond language, general improvements of all campuses, correct, Brad?
That's right.
Yeah, so I thought.
And this is a grant you can apply for every year, correct, Jeff?
That's correct.
I hope moving forward that we do not miss deadlines, and those are some of those areas that we
Absolutely.
do not miss out on taking the opportunities to have those, presented and lose out on because of just some negligence.
My question was, why wasn't the board notified of this?
And I did call Randy today and said, hey, we're getting all the information, here's what's happening. So I did reach out to Randy, I apologize. From there, we started working on grants immediately and tracking information, and I do apologize for that.
And then what about because I noticed it showed you absent at the Unitech meeting when I looked at the minutes.
Correct.
So you don't feel like you should have been the one to break this news to them?
A year ago, the board asked Ms. Bachman and I to trade places and be the representative because she evaluates the Unitech staff.
But still, yet presenting that to the other superintendents on a brand new
Right.
director seems kind of harsh to have to lay that on the other superintendents that this school district didn't take care of that.
If I'm not mistaken, Ms. Bachman was there, well, one of the minutes, front of me, but I think it was Mr. King from Bismarck specifically asked about the grants. I would have brought it up anyway, because we were trying to be transparent as we could be with it. He brought it up and asked about, you know, what our status was on the grant. At that time, it made it an easier transition for me to talk about it. I wouldn't, you know, like you said, nobody wants to bring that stuff up.
Sure.
But when he asked about it, we started discussing it. And I think that myself and Ms. Bachman were both very honest with the advisory committee about, you know, the situation, and that we were reaching out trying to find other monies. But unfortunately, you know, when Dr. Levy and myself both called DESE and spoke with them, they said, well, we were looking at about a 34% or about a 27% decrease originally, and then they said we only had a 30%. Well, they only had a 30% because they took the monies that we had allotted and divided those up. So when we asked about, you know, it was a hard deadline, and now there's not a lot of the monies left in those. I think, like you said, he got something back from computer science, health services, and culinary arts. And 2 of those 3 we've already received word that we're going to get some money, but it's just going to make a dent. In the areas that we're going to have some need, there's not anything available.
Will it help if some of these teachers are able to take their students out into the field, barring COVID, kind of just?
Oh, I think so.
Okay.
That would definitely help as far as construction, because if construction is, if we are virtual, or if we are on campus only, they're using our materials. When they're out in the community working on a nonprofit project, let's say they're doing a building for the Boy Scouts or for the, you know, for a women's shelter or something, those funds are picked up by, you know, they're paying for materials only. And so those material funds are picked up by that agency. And we have started to build in some travel expense and some things like that. We discussed at our meeting as well, because we were having to fit the bill to travel back and forth. And I think we've come up with some ideas to reduce that, and get some help from those other districts. So it's going to help a little bit if we're able to get out with COVID-19 and get out in the community. Whether or not that happens, we'll have to wait and see.
Any other questions on the consent agenda items?
On our, I see that, you know, we had to buy a lot of COVID-related items, and one of the particular businesses that we've been buying from, we spent a lot of money with them. Did we reach out to try to do some bids on the amount of money that we've spent and make sure we got the best prices we could get, or we just?
No, I know Sherry has talked to Cape Supply, CNS. She's done local vendors. She's reached out to multiple people to get the very best she can for what's coming in.
I think moving forward, we need to put some of these things out to bid, because I looked at some of the receipts and they were, and I know personally from the business I do, is that there's a lot of gouging going on.
Right.
And a lot of businesses have taken advantage of the COVID and really marked prices up and took advantage of, you couldn't get it, well, we can sell it to you, and but here's the price. And I just hope that we didn't get kind of.
Right. And we had that today.
I know we have it. We have to get some stuff, and you got to have it. But there's also some things we got to make sure that we're just not just blowing money.
Agreed.
Because we don't have money, even though some of this is going to be picked up by CARES.
Right. And we did. I mean, even today, a simple item. The pumps and sprayers, or you talk about gouging, they've gone from anywhere from 75 cents to $5 each. And so,
I know, and it's tough. But we're spending this out of state. And is there any local companies? Is there any? I know there's businesses in Missouri that's what they do. So I want to make sure that we're spending our money wisely, even though we're taking care of our students and our staff.
Sure.
With all of that being said, do we have everything we need as far as sanitizers and that thing, and does everything that we have meet specs and all of that?
So she picked up more additional hand sanitizer today to make sure there are any additional classrooms that need it taken care of. Today we had additional disinfectant pieces dropped off, so we have worked to build a supply of that and a supply of PPE to make sure that when we come, we have the tools available.
Okay. And everything we have meets.
Everything we have meets, and we have made sure that we've checked, obviously, the sheets that go with it, but also analyzing the kill time for some of the materials we use to make sure that it kills quickly.
Is there something in place in reference to not throwing away dispensers and such things as that? Because refills is, I mean, if you're gonna have to buy $5 dispenser.
Right.
If you save the ones you got.
Yes.
That's where they get you.
Yeah.
They want you, they'll sell you the product, and they'll, oh, you'll use our dispenser, and they'll give a dispenser free, but then the next thing you know, you start buying those bags, and you're paying $25, $30 for a quart of sanitizer.
All of our pumps are refillable, and we have the refillable stuff already in stock to go and refill them. So our goal is to keep all the exact pumps that we have right now as long as we can.
Great. Any other questions? But we did, some of the stuff we bought for COVID was able to be applied to the CARES.
Absolutely. It includes all of our hand sanitizer, our chemicals for disinfectant. It includes masks. It includes gloves, many, many things.
But we bought it in time that it, under what you applied for.
Yes, absolutely. And the good news is how that they at the commission meeting on Tuesday, they changed the expectations for the grant, because you used to have to buy it ahead of time, and before they approved the grants, they allowed you to say, obviously you got to spend your own money first, but they will 100% reimburse. And so we can turn in our existing receipts as well as new receipts on the same grant, as long as it's for those items.
Anything else? No other questions. I need a motion to approve the consent agenda item.
I'll make that motion.
Got a motion?
I'll second.
Got a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Moving on to Communication Transportation Handbook. Jason? Transportation Handbook.
Well, you can see there our communication on our transportation handbook. You can see the handbook that we issued out to drivers when we did our orientation first safety meeting. I will tell you, we reduced our safety meeting. We typically do an 8-hour training. We cut it down to come in, pick up your book, and then we would do the rest of our training virtually, that we could get done virtually. It also includes the collective bargaining agreement that you guys already approved in it. And you know, any relevant updates. So that's one reason it's, you know, it's longer. But I did talk to Cassie, and I said I want the whole thing in there. I want it real transparent from the get-go what all is in there. So so we did issue that to all drivers. They've all signed off. They all have it. So we issued that as, again, a communication item for you guys to be aware of.
Do you guys do like monthly safety meetings or
So,
quarterly?
Dave, that's our plan. We already meet monthly. We do cancel a meeting if there's just nothing to meet about. We always have safety as part of the discussion. That's what we're going to do. I'm also kind of looking to see if I can add some virtual safety to them. I didn't want to overdo the videos already. They already have approximately 3 hours of safety time in there with videos. But we will be looking at other virtual options. So that leaves us four meetings that we'll pick up along the way. One good thing about that is we'll have other staff involved too as we go with those meetings. So, but we just didn't feel like with COVID increasing. I will compliment this. Mr. Finley, Mr. Pryor, Mr. Stokes worked very hard. The bus garage was all set up for the meeting. We had things spread out. We were beyond 6 feet apart. We had the garage open. We were going to have good weather. We were going to try to do our in-meeting stuff early. We were going to start as early as we could before 7 o'clock and get them in there and get it going. But Mr. Finley and I just talked as we got close, and we just said it's just not worth it. If we would have a contact tracing that would come out of that and lose some drivers for the first day, if it would have been August 24th, it just wasn't worth it. So we cut it down. But they've all signed off on their handbooks.
Good deal. Talking about, do we have a plan set up for, in case we do have a driver that is has to be quarantined and we lose that driver? Because I am hearing that we're sub-bus drivers are hard to come by.
We are. That was one thing I was going to talk about in my assistant superintendent report.
And if you want to move it to that, that's fine.
Well, I'm very happy in that we are fully staffed. You know, I couldn't say that last August. We are in such better shape, and we've got a good group, drivers, aides, across across the board fully staffed. What's been difficult is subs. We're down to 5. Hopefully you're going to vote on one tonight that would get us to 6. That's including Mr. Finley, that's including Mr. Pryor, and then Mr. Stokes we have as a full-time substitute, and he works as a mechanic assistant. So he would be our first. But I would really like to keep Mr. Pryor and Mr. Stokes from driving as much as possible, so you've got them for emergencies, right? So you're right. I mean, that's what we put it out. If you notice on Facebook, we put it out again that we're looking for subs. We usually get a good response. I probably shouldn't put it out an hour before we put out our school was going to get postponed to September 8th. I think we got overplayed, on that, so we're going to post it again. But what's getting us to, Dave, in your question, is retirees.
Yes.
I've had one retiree tell me probably semester I'll be back. I've got another one who has said I'm going to go home and be with family, but when I'm out of state, but when I can come back, I'd like to. And here's the problem there. That retiree and his wife help. Wife's an aide. He's the other retiree out of state. That's a wife and an aide. So it's good because they're a great resource, but this is a really difficult time for retirees, and to go to somebody and say, I need you part-time, I need you to be a sub for a part-time job. That type of thing, the retirees are really a big plus for us. So yeah, anybody who knows anybody that would like to get trained, we'll pay them to get trained, and we'll do everything we can to get them ready to go as a sub driver.
Okay.
Just have a question on page 11, item F, in that it states in there, talking about the school district receiving state aid for transportation.
Yes.
Question I had there, it says that we will not be given anything for any routes that were not approved by the Board of Education. I don't recall, and it may have happened, I don't know, but did we approve all the routes? We did, Joan?
Yes,
Okay.
we do every year, usually in October.
Well,
And
in reading this, it
twice a
says,
year.
yeah, it says we preliminary in October, and then we do it again in June, finalize it. I didn't recall it being done.
We have
finalized.
October and February counts, and
Okay.
we will be submitting that.
Okay, as long as we've done that, just something caught my eye.
No, it's a good question.
Good.
Okay, moving on to item B, communication.
Yep. The Insight Design Studio is here. They've narrowed it down to a smaller presentation of items, and they'd like us to really look at those and create a plan to move forward so we know what projects we want to work with.
Hello. Promise we won't take up too much of your time tonight. So this is just a simplified version. Since our last meeting with you guys, we've met with the teachers. We talked about all the secured vestibules and got some feedback. Many more of those meetings will happen depending on what you guys decide tonight or soon. But this is your bond language that you guys submitted and voted on. So just breaking it down from there, and the costs associated to all the items that you had promised the community. So the first one, to complete safety and security improvements, I put all the secured vestibules in there. Primary school, $214,000. Parkside, $127,000. Intermediate, $484,000. Remember, that's more expensive because there wasn't an easy way to just punch through into the office. Middle school secured vestibule, $165,000. Exterior door replacement at the middle school, $72,000. The high school, this is just a very simple option of just adding a transaction window because we had discussed a couple options. $58,000, and then the Unitech secure vestibule. So a total of $1.28 million for that. So then we go into the repair and replace of roofs. We've talked about the primary school, how the original portion of that, it's a 15-year roof and it's aging, so it's $1 million for restoration of that. Me and Jeff last week, Thursday, I believe, yeah. We met Tony Sales at the middle school with our roof rep, and we walked, see some of the trouble areas. Tony was really worried about our budget first for the middle school. It wasn't enough, So we really got some of those addressed, and this budget reflects that. I have a flash drive, and it has all the information that we got from our roof rep. It's on there. It talks about all the pricing of everything. High school restoration, $277, and then the Unitech, $271. So for the roofs, $1.78 million. And then this is the big one, excuse me, the HVAC systems. We put Parkside and Intermediate. I know they're not as important at the moment. It's mainly middle school and high school, but we wanted just to include a price. Parkside, $312,000. Intermediate, $624,000. Middle school, $1.87 million. That would be like the cooling towers and all that stuff. And then the high school, $2.5 million. And that's the replacement of all the residential split units in there. This is music rooms and auditorium. The middle school auditorium renovation, $1.77 million. The middle school, the lobby renovation, $232,000. And we'd be updating bathrooms and stuff and taking out the ticket window, just updating that space, and creating ADA accessibility into it as well. The high school auditorium, the sound system, $374,000, and then the acoustical treatment in there is $271,000. Okay, and this is the ADA. Parkside, just adding that front sidewalk to get to the main entrance. We have $25,000. Intermediate, the ADA, a new ADA lift, so you can get 2 people on there, $39,000. The exterior paving, the north side of the Intermediate, it's just gravel right now, so to get some concrete down there so it's safer for the kids. Middle school, front entrance, ramp and stair, so there's no easy way to get an exterior ramp in there without busting up those stairs, because right now you step into the school, so we would have to level out that landing, and then adding an elevator to the middle school gym cafeteria. So that brings you to $454,000. And then replace kitchen equipment. We had our kitchen consultant out, and I've got a list of a breakdown. I think I gave that to you at the last board meeting as well. But all that totals out to $388,000. And then new playground equipment. So you've got 3 at the primary school, Parkside, and then Intermediate. So that comes out to $1.5 million. Depending on what you guys want, like we just did a new playground at Perryville, and it was around this cost as well. It's about $300,000, and that a lot of it's the rubber that you're going to be paying for. But that number could fluctuate as well depending on how the equipment. And then one item that we have a definite on is the track. It's $602,000. This is we've had talks with Katie. It's the middle of the road, so we had the option of just like a simple one, and then replacing the base, and then the full, like the concrete. Yeah. So it's $602,000. And then you guys are paying back some, so that's included. I don't have a final number on that. And then at the end of your bond issue, it says, to the extent funds are available, complete other repairs and improvements to the existing facilities of the district. So I put LED lighting in here. That could also be grouped in ESCO. I know you guys have been talking with a couple of companies. And then acoustical treatment in the commons. I just put a $44,000, or roughly about what all of our commons come in at. Fixing the intermediate basement. This is the more expensive option. You guys, as a district, can just go in. I think one of the options was just caulking, so that can easily be done with the district. I just wanted to put it in the presentation. The high school secured vestibule in addition. I have plans of all this I'll talk about, but that's adding on to the front entrance. And then adding a bathroom in the high school, the 800 wing. So if you add all of those up, it equals 20.53 million. So obviously we don't have all that. So that's why we're kind of wanting some decisions moving forward, what we need to focus on. And here are some of the updated plans. For the primary center, one thing that got brought up is they really want like either like a wall, some kind of barrier, so parents can't just go through and kids can't go through. So we added this little barrier in both. So it's two separate areas, but it'd be like a half wall or a gate, so it's you can still visibly see. But other than that, there hasn't really been any major changes there. Parkside liked the admin where it was, so we're just going to add a sidewalk in up the front and tie in to this front stair. Intermediate, we talked with Dr. Mattingly, I think it was last week or 2 weeks ago. She had brought up the idea they're not going to be using their computer lab anymore. So to move, we were trying to cram the nurse. There was a lot to cram into that space. So she had brought up to use the computer lab as the new nurse, so it could be isolated. It's a bigger space, and there's an exterior door. So on the plan before, we had we were adding onto the front of it, but there's a big old column there, so that created a problem. But walking through a couple more times, you can just angle this wall, so we would be adding it to the front. We would be adding on the inside, so no new exterior would happen over here. Mainly reception, you got a couple offices, and then a large teacher's workroom, be for storage for the admin, or teachers can come in for more work supplies and stuff like that. Conference room, a little kitchenette, and then a records. Middle school, unfortunately, their admin area is very tight. They've got this existing storage, but there's a lot of electrical panels in there, and we can't move those. So unfortunately, we're. I know they had wanted to do the assistant. Oh my goodness.
Touchscreen. It's touchy.
It is very touchy. Sorry about that, guys. They were wanting the assistant principal to have access to the main corridor so students could come in, but unfortunately we can't make that happen because of the existing vaults here, and the secretaries need access to that as well. I did it again. So you can come in, the reception, there's going to be 2 areas, and then assistant principal. So my thinking was from the main corridor, if people are coming in, this secretary would deal with those, and then this secretary would deal with people coming in. And then this is just showing the area. We haven't really developed what the auditorium is going to be like, not yet. And this is the new elevator location. We went there, measured where all the windows were. There's a couple columns. So this is not affecting, this is taking out one window.
So is this taking you on the outside of the building, the elevator?
Yes.
That's correct. Yep.
Yes.
It's
And
most cost effective without taking.
With structural, and you got to take
Correct.
the floor out of the upstairs, and
And
you
then
got
messing with program space that you already have, so,
Yeah.
getting in the way of the entry to the cafeteria and stuff.
and this is in between the 2 big mechanical units too.
So we
we're not-
were verifying on the exterior that you wouldn't have to move those
Yeah.
units on the exterior as well.
And we were talking to add that vestibule on the side, so you'll be able to enter. So for games, you can enter, but this door could be locked so they can't get into the cafeteria, but they can enter the elevator, get upstairs, and then they'll just walk out there.
So it'll be a system of controls along with it as well. So staff and stuff will have a swipe card.
and then it'll be a sidewalk. Well, there's already a sidewalk there, and I guess
Correct. Yep.
Yeah.
you use that existing.
That's what we're hoping
Yeah.
for.
Okay.
Worst case would be a small little add-on to it coming off of it.
So this is the simple high school option. There's already a desk right here, so just adding that transaction window, we would still extend that vestibule because it's right here right now, but we would extend that out. So you could get that transaction window in there. But this was the other plan that we had come up with we're addressing some of the issues that we heard talking with staff. So it's pretty similar to the plan we showed you before. But instead, this whole area would become band storage, and we would open up the band area. This is a load-bearing wall, so we would have to add some columns in there as well. But the counselor suite, then you have a teacher's work, nurse, storage for a receptionist, a row of offices, a records room, mechanical, a little teacher's lounge with a staff toilet. What this also does is opens a lot of the media center, and this is just a plan our interiors department put together. There could be potential, but that would all be worked out. And this is a plan for the bathrooms over in the 800 wing hallway. Our original plan was to come off of this corridor and try to leave as much space back here. But unfortunately, this is a ramp, so we can't access that. So we would have to take out a row of lockers up here. But just group bathrooms, men and women, and then a staff toilet for faculty, and this bed classroom across the hall. And this could just be a flex room. It's a pretty good size. It's about 500 square feet, so a small resource room. And this is Unitech. When we were walking around, Jeff, the code master over there, he noticed that there's not another exterior exit. By code, with that many people in there, you need 2 ways out. And there are 2 doors here and here, but they're too close to one another. So we're proposing to add a door in there. And then a little bit else has changed. I have the floor plan drawn correctly. I did have an office there, but that's not there anymore. Open all this space up. The little kitchenette that was there, take that off, expand the director's office so you can have a little table in there for small meetings, and add more storage here. Okay, and this, we're trying to get the work done next summer. But this is kind of like a typical design, bid, build construction schedule that we usually go through. So this is just starting Monday. So pre-design 3 weeks, schematic design 3 weeks, design development 7 weeks, and then the 50% construction document 7 weeks, 100% construction document 7 weeks, and then bidding negotiations could be 4 weeks, 5 weeks, depending on when your board meeting hits. So I kind of want to just lay that out there for you guys. So the sooner we get decisions, the faster we can get this
Just to give you a good idea
going.
of timelines on hitting, next summer, or maybe we need to push it, just so you know, once the decisions are made, where does that put us into actually dirt moving? So.
And with a CM, these could change as well. It could be fast track depending on what projects we're doing and when we can get part of the packages out. But that's all we got for you guys. I know it's a lot to swallow. Any questions?
So what do you need us to start selecting the projects we need to move forward on?
Right. Yes.
Originally, whenever we categorized our projects, is there still a chart of how that went?
I've shared that with them as well.
Probably like to see that.
Yeah.
I probably have one somewhere, but it could be done by the time I found it.
And again, we're at your leisure, so it's when you guys want to see these built. It's not, hey, let's get this going so IDS can work. That's
right.
Definitely not why we're just saying, hey, if we're going to meet that summer deadline and when we're start moving some, getting some shovels in the ground, this is when decisions just need to be made, just so we can make sure we've got this covered. So you're not rushing, the bids at the end, or. So.
Yeah, even if you get a contractor on board in April, that doesn't mean that work can start the next day. I mean, you can start demo, but there's lead times on all that, so you gotta submit the shop drawings, and then we have to approve them, and then you get the things ordered, and that's a couple months.
Well, just like if you're changing, say, the high school where if we did go in with a different type of layout for the front of the school, that means that the roof is going to change.
In that area, yes.
So that leads to more cost, and is that figured into?
Yeah, correct. That'd be part of the renovation numbers that we put together. So we'd be expanding new roof out the front and then how we're attaching to that existing roof to see how far we can go, which we've already got part of that roof work.
Got it somewhere.
Well, your timelines are, you're wanting to be able to start when school is out next summer, right?
Correct.
Which obviously there's a strong possibility we're gonna be running later into the summer than before. And I don't know what about that window when we close and open again, because.
And what is the length of that opening?
Right.
I mean, that's the killer.
That's gonna be short.
I mean, even, this year and how we're dealing with the summer break, or the winter break, and then how far is the spring gonna go into?
And then the contractors themselves, where are they at on the projects that they have? So, and you all, you spoke with the CMs at risk that just this past week, as a matter of fact, and the teams we discussed, these guys are pretty good at saying, okay, here's what it's gonna take us once we get, information from you on when we need to go, and they can always adjust their schedules as well. We all know this is just such a flex time that nobody can predict what's going on, we all thought we'd be back with no problem, right? It started in August to here we go again. So again, we'll flex our schedule with whatever you guys need to do, so.
And a couple of these schools, it's just simple renovations to the admin area, so.
There's certain items, obviously those vestibules, those don't take us 7 weeks to do.
Right.
That's just.
These are based on, we just.
A standard contract, probably in the $7 to $10 million, $5 to $10 million project, that's the kind of scope you're gonna get. There are projects we can put out earlier, so definitely like vestibules and stuff like that, something we could definitely get to next summer. Again, what is next summer, right? So is that a fall summer, is that a spring summer? We just gonna have to, I guess, play it as best as we can, so.
Or like the roof packages, we could issue a roof package, and that work could start this spring when the weather gets better. But like the vestibules, the playgrounds, that's probably summer work.
What about the air conditioners? You could do that.
That we could, depending.
But you're gonna want to get the roofs done first before you start messing with air conditioners, I would think, too.
I can remember them setting air conditioners and not really hooking them up.
The LED lights,
Spring come
which
around, have them set.
that stuff, we've talked to some consultants where they could come in the evenings and get a couple of classrooms, or they can come in on weekends and handle it that way too, where you're still school's in session.
Correct.
That work could probably start like now, theoretically.
Yeah, and with the CM on board, we would work with them and schedule this and phase this as best as we can. Work around your guys' schedules.
And when you're putting like basic prices, because I know I kept seeing that on this, does that like include landscaping? Or is that something additional? So when you go out and you start tearing up sidewalks and whatnot and adding, then is that an extra cost to us to make it look nice?
Well, I mean, you're either gonna get a sod or a seed and straw kind of situation. It's not gonna be adding, shrubs and trees.
So if you pull it out, then it's up to us to take care of putting it back.
It depends on where that work's being done. So like I know at the middle school, there's more landscaping there. So that's something we could look at is during that construction, are we gonna put a planter in there? Is there gonna be some kind of shrubbery that we'll definitely work on seeing how we can do that. But most of this is just hard construction, so,
Okay.
Yeah. And all these
that's a
will
great
get-
point, because especially at the middle school, you got those big trees on the left, and you got some good strong trees up front as well, that would really be rough to lose, so, yeah.
And the more detail we get with these plans, the better prices we will have as well.
Okay.
And I'm sure COVID's not gonna affect any price. Another reason we're trying to encourage speed and any is the whole one COVID reaction we've seen is a lot of subs especially are hungry, right? They want to keep staff on board. So we've seen in the last 3 bids we've put out in the last month and a half is some pretty good savings. And that's mostly through the labor portion of it. You know, some of the like you said, some of the commodities and stuff, sometimes wood's like, what, 3-4 times the price it is now. So luckily we're not building a lot of wood structures right now, but you know, there is wood in a typical construction. But the labor is what we're saving on a lot right now. So that's one thing we're trying to keep in mind as well as we move down the tracks. People are going to start getting busy again when the economy gets rolling again, right? Gets rolling again. So we're trying to stay within that COVID bubble, I guess you call it. So. I appreciate the time very much. Thanks
Thank
for
you, guys.
coming out and talking
Thank
to
you.
us. We're always a phone call away. If you got any questions, need any clarification, please don't hesitate to reach out to us.
There was, Megan came up with this idea that if it would help, instead of trying to make a decision in a big group like this, if we want to have a breakout group and have a handful of board members, Dr. Levy, you know, whoever, maybe some of the principals, we get together and have a session and hammer out some of these and say, okay, which ones, and then you as a group then can present that back to the board and make final decisions, or say, as a breakout group, this is the decisions we made. We just want to, you know, let the rest of the board members know this is the direction we're heading. That's just a thought that Megan came up with that might, you know, maybe help, instead of in a big group, because everybody's got different opinions, and maybe we just, a handful of people help guide us.
Informal setting.
Yeah, more informal, and so we're just throwing that out as an idea.
Sounds good.
Thanks again. Appreciate it
Thank
very
you,
much.
guys.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Have a safe trip.
Walk that way. I'm not going. I'm this way.
Okay, communication item C, discuss the MSBA guidelines for participation in activities.
So in July, MSBA produced their plan for re-entry for fall sports. And so what I had emailed everybody the other day, and like I had said in the email, try to, on my end, on what I think we like to do is stay as close to as we can to the guidelines and the recommendations that MSBA puts forth. That way when we get questions, or when folks want to know the why, if we are able to let them know that we're following the MSBA guidelines, I feel like that's kind of been a good way to go. So in July, MSBA said no virtual. If you go all virtual, you're 100% virtual. No sports. Okay. And so what I had sent you the other day was the amendment to that. They're now saying if your school is 100% virtual, like some of the schools in St. Louis have went to, you may now have sports, okay? But in July, they said if you offer face-to-face and virtual, any kind of hybrid with that, if you offer face-to-face, you can have sports. It's a local decision. And so at that point, Katie and Doc Levy and myself thought that that's the route we would want to go, is since they're allowing us to do it and they're saying we can do it, that's what we chose. That's what we recommended. And so that's where we're at. But I had sent you, the other day I just sent you the amendment, because originally MSBA was saying all virtual, you're not playing. And now what they just came out with not too long ago was we changed our mind. They did that because a lot of the big St. Louis folks had jumped in the middle of them and were agitated, and MSBA listened to them. So.
And Chad, they actually released another bylaw change today regarding not necessarily virtual students, but the kids can do their workouts at home now when they are.
Yeah, so this thing is so fluid, always changing. So yeah, so what Doc Levy's saying on that is so you have to get your 14 days in, regardless of any of this mess of practice. And so what MSBA sent out today, a change that they made, is not a positive test. If a kid gets a positive test, there's no virtual online to get him eligible or to get her eligible to play. But if they are one of these kids that are 14-day quarantine because they were around a mom or a dad or a brother or sister or somebody of a close contact, they can get their 14 days of practice in if they do it virtually live for whatever time. I was on the Zoom meeting today, whatever time the coach feels necessary. So it could be honestly 15 minutes, 30 minutes, that would constitute a practice if the coach wants to, in order for that kid to get eligible on a 14-day quarantine, again, not positive. So they're always, the Michigan guidelines are changing like crazy, but anyways.
So our plans for upcoming events here shortly. I think you guys have been putting some stuff in play. Any thoughts on where we're at on those?
We had lengthy discussion today. We would like to limit some crowd in events that are inside. So volleyball, high school volleyball games, middle school volleyball games, and we would like to limit football crowd to 4 tickets per athlete, 4 tickets per Raiderette, 4 tickets per cheerleader, and band. So there's still going to be a crowd there, but I think we'll be surprised at what it would limit. You know, the area there where the kids are all in a free-for-all there, that would be gone. Your casual fan from local schools, you know, we get this a lot. Central's at Union, and folks don't want to go to Union to watch Park Hills play. I guarantee you those folks, anybody that's going to have to travel a little bit, those folks week 1 will be in Bonne Terre if we don't do this deal, because they'll want to watch North County and Farmington next Friday. So I think, and what we would do for the opposing team is I would get with, so next week we would play Farmington. I would ask Coach Bacon tomorrow, if everybody's on agreement here on this plan, I'd ask him tomorrow, how many varsity football players are you going to have on the sideline? He'd say 65, and he'd get 4 tickets for those 65. Now, what a lot of Jefferson County folks are doing is they're trimming down some of the activity stuff. So they're not allowing opposing cheerleaders to come to the games. Festus, Windsor, Hillsborough, DeSoto, to limit those tickets.
Right.
I got an opinion on this, just an opinion, but nobody likes sports and activities any more than I do. You might be as much, but not anymore. I think a lot of kids wouldn't even finish school without the activities. However, I've seen so many rules and regulations during this COVID thing that don't make any sense. And for one, some areas, not here, some areas, you could go to the bar, but you couldn't go to church. Stupid. Some areas, happened to me. I have some condos in Florida. I couldn't rent one for 2 months, but I could walk across the street and get a motel room. Still go there. That was crazy. And when you really think about it, having activities and you're not going to school, you're virtual, don't make any sense either. I mean, that's just my opinion. I think if you're going to go to school face-to-face, fine, but I think if you stay home all day and then you go play football, cheerlead, play in the band, whatever, you're right with those same kids you would have been at school with that day. That's my opinion on the thing.
But at the same time, that limits their exposure too. If they're at home.
They're still exposed though.
But they're limited to less exposure by the hundreds of kids at school. They wouldn't be as exposed as if they were in school. And there's always extenuating circumstances too. What if you've got a situation where the family has 2 kids, a high school kid that happens to be a football player or a cheerleader or a band member, and they've got a young sibling, and both the parents work, and this is the parents' decision to have that older child take virtual classes so they can stay home and make sure that that younger sibling does their online things too. That wasn't that kid's choice, and I don't think we can penalize them because their parents made that choice for them to have to stay home to help their family out. There's a lot of things that go into this.
I would think that'd be a very small.
Actually, overall, it is a very small number. We only have 9 students who are virtual and are participating in athletics in the fall.
At the high school
At
level.
the high school.
Right.
Now,
yeah.
middle school may change, you know. of
We
course,
don't
that
know
doesn't start
yet because
till
we
next
haven't
week.
started practice. We don't have rosters yet for middle school.
But we do know,
9.
overall of all our fall activities, we only have 9. So,
I'm 100% on what Randy's saying. There's no logic to me at all to say that a kid can't set his butt in a seat in school, but he can go and roll around on the football field in the blood and the sweat and the mud and the spit and the snot, but he can't sit in a school seat. That makes no sense whatsoever, at all, to me. That's
Unless
just-
it's the scenario that I just explained.
Well, you know, but they wouldn't have to stay in lunch to the younger sibling if they were both in school.
Well, that just comes down to a personal opinion.
So does this.
Which is, that's what I'm saying right here. That's my personal opinion.
it's not easy to navigate. It really hasn't been easy because, for one thing, they changed their rules. Every time someone puts a little pressure on them, the rules change. And so we find the more restrictive we are, you go above and beyond those rules, you're going to get caught in trying to make an exception here or an exception there because there's always something that surprises you.
And it's really, and I'll probably be the most unpopular person in this room, and I love sports as much as Randy does or anybody else in the country. But it doesn't make sense to me to have the sports if you can't set your butt in school.
Any activities, sports.
Yeah, it don't make any difference. You know, my kids played sports all the way through school. Loved it. We followed them forever. But it doesn't make sense that you can go out and you can play sports, but you can't set your butt in school. It don't make sense.
Now, to me, it was just one of those things, that you see a lot of decisions made like this during this whole COVID thing that don't make any sense. You know, a lot of it does. Having virtual makes sense. I think if you're afraid, have your virtual, stay home. That's your choice. I don't see staying home and then getting ready and going out for the night with the same kids that went to school. I just don't understand the logic.
Didn't we put this out last month or month before that if they went virtual? I read that somewhere, that they could still play. So now
Well, it
we're.
was mission.
Going on that mission
Right.
statement.
We just
Yeah,
followed the mission
we
statement,
just
yeah.
followed the mission statement.
Yeah, just
And
mission
it was
statement.
within our, what was within our waivers for parents to sign for their students to participate. We just followed the mission statement
But we-
within
but
those
We did
waivers.
put this out in some form saying that they could
It
play.
was- yes.
They could play, they could participate, they could do all the different things, that we were following the MSHA guidelines.
Yes,
And we always follow the MSHA guidelines.
we do.
Well, that's not really a guide. Well, the guideline says
Well-
it's a local decision.
And
And
the guideline says they can play if they're virtual.
it says that's a
It
local
says
decision.
individual schools can make that decision.
And that's why we opened up virtual. Again, it's not just to let somebody in, it's to let maybe somebody wants out. You know, say, hey, if I can't play football, I'm going to school, you know. They ought to have that opportunity, since they were told that. In or out.
And since opening, we've had kids choose both. We have had some, yes, I want to go virtual, but some, yes, I would rather come back to the classroom. Not because of this topic, just because what I selected before is not what I want now.
You've had some change since we reopened.
Mhm.
We have.
But go back into the classroom, yeah.
Yeah. I think the mitigating measures push some back to come back to school. That makes sense? We've
No, it
seen
doesn't
that.
make any sense, but it's not supposed to make sense
Yeah,
today.
our numbers have stayed pretty equal because it's been interesting.
What, has anything changed since we put out that we were gonna come back September 8th in the yellow phase? Has
We've
anything
had,
changed?
well, we've just had.
That's
yeah.
why I think, Dave, I think some people have gone, you know what, they're gonna be yellow, they're wearing masks, you know, we're gonna go ahead and come to school. We haven't seen a big increase in virtual, it's kind of balanced itself out, so, for what it's worth.
We are looking at 220 students in the high school currently are enrolled in virtual, and 176 in the middle school. That's a very large class in the middle school, so it's 176 out of about 550 students, and just 220 out of 865 in the high school. So that gives you a perspective on just how many are coming face to face.
I'm surprised a larger percentage aren't in some type of activity. You said how many was actually doing virtual? And
9
In the high school.
in the high school. We do not have middle school number, they haven't started yet, so.
And that's, you're counting all activities, band?
Not band.
Not band. The band's
six-
co-curricular.
The six fall sports, cheer and dance. I don't know the band numbers, but the six fall sports that we offer, and
But band is
cheer
a
and dance.
co-curricular, so it falls into a class, so you would have to be on campus to take marching band, if that makes sense, because you get a grade for it.
So do we currently have students that have signed up for virtual that do participate in sports?
Just 9.
Right now?
No.
Just 9.
100%, they're gonna stay home. Yeah, 9.
Okay, do any of them have any underlying health conditions that would keep them at home versus being here?
Something we probably couldn't ask anyway because of
Offhand,
HIPAA.
no.
Okay.
So we're coming back in September in the yellow phase, we're gonna wear masks. What are we doing with these kids right now? Or they don't have to wear a mask right now, face coverings.
Sidelines. So if they're not, when we come back and we're gonna wear masks in the
I'm talking
classroom.
about right now. What are we doing?
No, right
Not
now.
when we come back.
Like during their practices right now.
So right now, we're not saying we're in a yellow phase, we're in a green phase as far as activities go.
Yes, sir.
But Misha has a rule for face coverings, right?
I've handed out 500 masks in the last 2 days.
Oh, I heard it.
What Misha tells us with these masks are, if they're engaged in physical activity, they don't wear the masks. It's when they're on the sideline, and where it got real squirrely is football. The National Federation has said, under no circumstance can you have any kind of mask situation that would maybe come out of your, so the gaiters that Misha told us that we could order, that I bought 500 of, you can't have those for football because it's now a hazard for, like a horse collar situation.
My grandpa's old.
Yeah, and so they said none of that. It'd have to be inside the helmet. But on the sidelines, big part that they use is like captain's meetings, pre-game, to and from the game. So getting off the bus and going into your locker room, and then again.
So we're there now per mission.
Yes, I've handed it out and said.
The reason I asked that, is this going to change when we come back?
Right.
Here was our stand with it, athletics-wise, with masks. Our stand was until we as a school are going to have to wear them in our classroom. Didn't see any reason why we had to wear them on the sidelines.
Mm-hmm.
But now that that's changing, we've handed out the 500 masks. Here we go.
Does the face shield on the helmet, does it qualify as compared to a mask?
I would
Be no different than if you go somewhere.
Because it's just from the eyes.
You're gonna have to cover the
This
mouth.
is the-
Okay.
My friend's son plays football in Texas, and they've ordered full shields that come all the way down to the mouth guard for their kids to play with for football.
That's kind of what I've seen.
And they make them wear their masks underneath their practice helmets to play now. And they're doing 2 days. But they're also in a state mandate. They wear a mask as soon as they come out of the house. You don't take it off.
I know this time of year, it's busy, fall sports are getting ready to kick up, and with this COVID stuff, about 80% of every text or email or phone call I get has some kind of, and if it's not us, it's another school. I'm here, we've had some tournaments and tournament play's been an interesting deal. Anything that's going to involve multiple teams, we've had some folks drop in some of those deals.
Well, are we standing right now at sports schedules starting normal, like next Friday, we're playing?
Saturday, this Saturday, jamborees. We've got 2 single team jamborees, which there's another MSBA adjustment. And you've never been able to have just one team in a jamboree. They've always required you to have 3 teams total. And because of all this COVID mess, now they say you can have just a single opponent. So our soccer team's gonna play Saxon, and our softball team has a 4-team jamboree, and our volleyball's got a single opponent. Jefferson's gonna come in.
Some schools canceled their jamborees, hadn't they?
Some have.
You think you're gonna get a huge backlash on your limited tickets at the Farmington, North County game?
Yeah.
Yes.
Probably.
I think you will too.
Yeah.
I mean, that's probably the.
Jason's gonna be videotaping, aren't you, Jason?
That's probably the highest attended game in.
Yeah, right.
In the whole conference.
That and, our 2 biggest games will always be a Farmington home game and homecoming. I mean, that's.
What do we usually average on Farmington game? Is it 5,000-6,000?
Oh, sure.
I don't know if it's that many anymore, but I know it used to be, but I would guess close to 3, for sure.
So what do you think this is gonna bring us back down to?
1,200.
About 1,400.
So would you still feel the same way about sports if we were in a red phase and we were totally virtual no matter what?
I would be more curious why we'd be playing sports if we was.
Well, that was gonna be one of my questions tonight.
Yeah.
Where are we going when we go to red phase?
It's crazier, I think.
I mean, we're gonna shut down the school buildings, if that's what the plan says. How the heck do you have any sports at all?
I don't see how you could.
Just a red phase.
I mean.
Or is it gonna be just like, or is it gonna be like professionals, you don't have no fans in the stands at all? It's just the players?
But like, that's what Mish is saying, right, is that even if we were all virtual, they could still participate.
Right, Webster Groves and some of those folks that have decided to have the Hazelwood districts. And those.
Rockwood.
But wait a minute, they haven't said that they're shutting their schools down.
They're not going
No.
down. They're 100%.
They're just
virtual.
100%
I get they're
virtual.
100% virtual.
If we shut
There are
down, we
people
shut
in that
down.
district, still in those buildings.
Mhm.
There's teachers and stuff in
Right.
that building. When we go to red, my understanding is we have nobody in our buildings,
No,
correct?
that's not correct.
We are gonna have people.
We would still be here working, yes.
Teachers,
I didn't think we were.
Yeah.
Teachers will be in their classrooms.
I thought we were shutting everything down.
No, teachers will be in their classroom doing their virtual classes.
So that's where my thinking is, if we would go, let's say for fall sports, we go all virtual. I mean, for winter sports, we go all virtual, and if we don't do it now, we penalize our fall sports, but then we're gonna allow it in the spring or the winter sports.
And then
Like, to look at overall picture that way.
it's very
Yeah.
dangerous waters.
Yeah.
Is
The
what
big
it is.
anticipation is that eventually this is going to be to a point where we can halfway be normal.
Right. That's my thing, like, why would we penalize our fall sports if there's a possibility we could go all virtual, and then by spring maybe it open up again?
I don't really feel like I want to penalize anybody, but I just have a hard time of finding the sense in saying you can't go to school, but you can go waller around. That's what I have a hard time.
I will give a thought, thinking of what you said, Randy, what you said, is you've got, if we go to school, you know, when I go out on the football field, I'm making that choice to go out there. My family's made that choice. And we're gonna have people, you know, choosing to come to school, choosing to go virtual, but if we go red, they don't. But we do have a lot of kids when school's open, and I'm not advocating that we don't have school, I'm not advocating that we go virtual. I'm ready and will support whatever this board, whatever we decide is best as a group, as a team. But we do have a lot of kids that ride buses, I'm thinking about buses, and when we come to school, that's all they have is a choice. And I guess what I'm saying is they don't have internet, they live rural, you know, they live in a place where I can't do virtual. My choice is to get into that area. And parents, I've talked to some parents like that. Their only real choice for whether it's work related daycare, rural, no internet, whatever, put my kid on the bus, bring him to school, do that. But if I decide to play the football or to play volleyball or any of our sports, I've made a choice to participate. So that's the, I mean, I agree with you, Randy, in a lot of it, and in G-Boat I do. I'm not, but I would say that's one thing to consider, because we've really been thinking hard about the bus. How do we social distance? How do we do that? You know what I mean? And that's one thing I've heard from some folks. It's like we're going in person. We just can't make a virtual work because I don't have a babysitter. I don't have a daycare. I don't have the wherewithal or means to have internet, or even if we give them a hotspot, it won't work in the rural area. You know what I mean? But we will provide a bus. We will get them there, and they'll be on that bus, and then they'll be. That's just the thought. This is one thing.
How many of these kids are looking for scholarships from these sports?
Could be some.
That's a really good point.
Sure,
So,
could be some.
Alan, to your point, and I am the youngest in my family, so it's hypothetical, but that would have been my scenario, right? My mom would have expected me to stay home and care for a younger loved one. And I needed my senior year. It is what got me a football scholarship, and it is what got me to college. So I'm right there with you. There are some kids that will open doors for them.
Well, yeah, I'm not saying don't play, I mean.
You're saying the choice is, yeah.
But the kid may not have a choice to go to school. They may have to stay home. I mean, there's a lot of scenarios that are gonna come into this, and we don't always know what's going on in somebody else's lives. And in some of it, it's none of our business what's going on in some of their lives. But if we take that away from them, if they are an athlete that's potentially a scholarship recipient, Dr. Levy was, and we take that away from them, does that open us up somewhere down the line as a financial liability to us, that we took it away from them?
If they go to school, they wouldn't be taking anything away from them. They don't have that choice we're all talking about when it comes to wearing a mask. They have to do that. There's no choice there.
They may not have a choice to come to school either if they're taking care of families. No, they may not.
But what about if this hadn't hit? They were gonna have to go to school. So
Then their younger sibling would be in school too.
exactly. Why can't they be in this, why can't this younger sibling go to school also?
What if there's a health issue that we don't know about with the younger one that there's not with the older one? There's a whole lot of what ifs here. And I think we leave it to the families to decide whether they want to go to school, and we leave it to the families to decide whether they want to allow their kids to play sports. We've already put it out there that we're going to follow the MSBA guidelines. We've already let them start. I don't see how we pull the rug out from under them now.
That thing from the commission says we can make that decision.
I know it says we can. I'm saying we shouldn't, because we've already told them that they can. And we can beat this back and forth as many times as we want to, and it's not going to change the fact that we don't know everybody's situation. And it might be a situation that's out of their control, that family doesn't want to take their child's opportunity away to play sports, but they might have to be there for another reason and not be able to go to school for another reason.
Good with staying where we're at, and let's move forward.
I would agree with that.
It's not an action item. So.
No, it's not.
But I think
As a board, you can make an action. I mean, you can turn anything.
Yeah, we could.
I think it's worthy of discussion.
Yeah.
I still think it's crazy.
I'm not saying it's not.
And
I've
it
had
could all
my
change
kid
next
during
week.
the whole spring season, and I hate it, but it's happened and it's done with, and I want to see these kids have an opportunity to. So
By next Friday, it may all be moot, and the health department, the CDC, and everybody else may say, shut it down, you can't play sports, you can't do it, you can't go outside.
Here's what's ultimately gonna happen is as we move through this schedule, pretend we're going into week 3 at DeSoto, and the DeSoto AD calls me and says, our starting running back and our starting strong safety tested positive for COVID, we're going to have to quarantine everybody. Well, week 3 is over. You know, it's not like, you know, in softball or volleyball or some of the other fall sports, we can tuck that game somewhere 2 weeks later on a Tuesday or a Thursday, and we can play it.
Mm-hmm.
And on Friday nights, those things will just be chopped. And
it can happen to us just as easy.
Yes.
Absolutely, absolutely. So it's going to be a wild ride.
Well, right now, Potosi has 7 band members tested positive. There's 140 people in their band. I guess they're waiting to find out right now if they're going to quarantine the whole band. You know, that's where we're going with
It
this.
is, and those pop-up cases are coming from everywhere.
Well, and our county now has taken over, as of today, our county has taken over the biggest hotspot in the state of Missouri. St. Francis County is now the new hotspot for new cases. We had 31 new cases overnight. We've had 2 or 3 deaths in the last couple of weeks. Thankfully, we've got one recovery now that's going to be coming home very soon. And Vicky's doing well. Hope you don't mind me saying that.
Nope, you're good.
I would say my employment is probably the biggest hotspot there is. And there's going to be more.
Yep.
Because they just got done doing mandatory testing yesterday. So guess what?
We're going again.
So
That's my point.
So, with the other part Chad shared, what about limiting? How do we feel about that?
Well, I think the limiting, 4 per participant, players and that kind of thing. But I think on the visitor's side, and boy, with next week's game, you'd really catch it with this, what I'm about to say, is you limit them to half of the number of what you do on ours. Because we don't have the stands capacity on the visitor's side that we do on the home side. Even if some of them would spill over to the home side, that's going to take away the ability to distance, and it's going to ruin what you've just tried to do.
well, there you use the track itself as saying, hey, we're going to
Seating.
Yeah.
There's a lot of schools that are saying bring lawn chairs.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of that. That's how we used to let people stand around the track, especially.
Then we stopped doing that because we didn't want them piled up there, but now, hey, let's keep our 6 feet
Yeah.
spread out.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of that, but that would alleviate that problem. But next week, you don't want to try to do that, because that would catch, that'd be a fire we don't light.
Speaking of selling lawn chairs. Speaking of next week,
Get your COVID chair here. Get your COVID chair.
there has been there's some athletic directors that are wanting to move in our area across for all fall sports, wanting to move senior nights early. So instead of playing them, and so we've discussed this with our coaches.
I think that would be
we may need to get some of those in, and so there's a few of them that have said, yeah, I think Potosi maybe is wanting to do football week 1, and they asked me, they said, would you consider that? And I said, week 3. There's no way. What it takes to do a week 1 anyways is a mess. And then Farmington coming in, I said, week 3 would be perfect. Week 1, not perfect.
Yeah, if we make it to week 3, that'd be great.
Yeah.
So do we need to?
We just need to know.
As an action item?
No, we don't have to vote on it. We just want to make sure that you guys can support it. If we start passing out tickets, we obviously recognize people could be upset in contacting you.
I'm good.
I'm okay with leaving it the way it is and letting them participate.
I'm good.
I'm talking about the tickets
Yeah.
to do 4 and 4.
I think I was thinking 5 because I was thinking about what we did for graduation. We were thinking about doing before it opened back up. And it's like, okay, that's kind of about where we need to be.
We considered 5, and some other local school districts have mentioned that they would do 4. We thought it would be better for some of us in the MAAA to be consistent. Not all of us, naturally, but some of us.
Well, and not every kid's going to have 4 people.
No,
They're not.
no.
Not every kid's going to have 4. Some of them won't have any. I mean, there's parents
Right.
out there that don't ever
Right.
come and watch their kid play.
But if they do have a friend or somebody like that and they have an opportunity to
Sure.
say, hey, you can get 4 tickets under my name, or 1 or 2,
Sure.
or have an opportunity.
Now, that don't include students, right?
Unless, I mean,
Unless a player wants to give you tickets
Correct.
for friends. and
So I'm
say,
talking about,
Yeah.
The student body's not allowed, they have to get a ticket too,
They have to
right?
get
they would have to get a ticket too, yes.
The only way they can come is with a ticket.
Right.
And what kind of tickets are you gonna use that they can't duplicate?
Well, week to week,
Because they will.
are you talking about week to week?
What kind of ticket are you gonna use?
So they're gonna, we'll have dates, we'll have the date, so they couldn't do it the next week.
So
And
you'll
then,
have something printed or
Yes.
stamped or
yes,
something
yes,
like
a
that?
stamp, yes.
Okay.
There's some other schools that are doing more like a pass gate list.
Yes.
Like they have to submit a form.
Some are,
that
some are
says,
doing a roster. and-
Yeah, this is my roster, this
Yes.
is who's coming in. Now,
Festus.
You'd have to have more
Right.
manpower at the door to check
Right,
through those and
right.
get crowded or whatever,
Festus is allowing 2 in per visiting kid. They're allowing 2, well, I think home as well. I think they're just
Yeah.
allowing 2
2
in for,
You know, they only have 1 set of stands,
right,
Right.
and you can't spread,
right,
No.
I mean,
You're
it's
on the
a big
concrete.
nice, but it's just one side only.
right.
Any other discussion? Not, we'll move on to item D, annual determination for the IDEA program.
I thought Dawn was behind me. Is she not behind me? So this is actually very good news, nothing to worry about. This is our annual review, and as you can see, we have scored 4 out of 4 in all areas. If you go to that second page, it tells you what our district score is and our determination overall score. And so we have met all the requirements put forth by DESE through IDEA for our special education programs. So a lot of praise goes to those people who do so much work to make that work.
Yeah, I'm proud.
We have many quality teachers and employees in our special education department who put in countless hours and are doing so right now as they have more guidelines to do before school starts to serve our students. And actually, it's nice to see that DESE does recognize that we do so well. So be proud of your district.
Not to go off subject here, but I had a question even earlier. If our teachers are all going to be in school for the next 2 weeks, they're not going to be?
They're not going to be. So what I sent you guys tonight, we'll talk about when we get the calendar, is
All right.
they would only work, they will not extend their contract in any way.
So we wouldn't run into that overtime?
No, that's it. Good question.
Okay, item E, board policy, regulation, and farm updates.
So MCE has their policy updates. They're in there this month. It's just to review them. Title IX has changed some, so it's in there. Tobacco products, alternative placement with actually Children's Division. These are just new policies. Now, what I would ask is, I know we're considering a policy change, but we still might need these in place. You know, even if we did change, we would need these in place prior to
Changing.
that. Yeah, prior to changing companies. So tonight's just communication. Next month would be approval, but they're all in there.
Cool. You know, on the policy, did we ever decide on the MSBA?
It's on tonight.
Okay. All right. I didn't get that. Moving on down to item F, pre-K, 6th grade Chromebook handbooks.
Okay, so with issuing handbooks to students for virtual instruction on the kindergarten through 6th grade level, we're not issuing them on the pre-K level, but we wanted to be ready if we did go red to have that option. So we went ahead and included pre-K on there. Appreciate the secondary level. They shared the handbook that they use at middle school and at high school. And so our elementary administrators and their leadership team was able to go through the handbook, make any needed changes. There's really not hardly any compared to what you'll see on the secondary level. Besides, it's changed there with elementary, applicable for elementary wording. We're gonna issue this with the Chromebooks when a virtual student checks out a Chromebook, and then the parents and guardians will sign at the end. You can see the acceptable technology use agreement. It does say in there what would happen if a handbook is or not the handbook, but the Chromebook. If they could damage the handbook, we won't charge them, but the Chromebook, we would charge them. And not necessarily, there'd be a rate possibility depending on what it is. The Chromebooks that we are going to issue have been warrantied. They're warranty for full replacement and parts depending. But we wanted to put that out there so if there was a need for cost. So basically, this is the same handbook we have on the secondary level. It's just been updated for the elementary level.
No report.
So on the Chromebooks, you think our, I truly feel probably our 2nd through 6th grade probably pick that up pretty easy. But this pre-K and K and 1st and even 2nd, do you think it's going to be pretty difficult, or it's going to be up to the parents to really try to navigate?
They're going to need support, and Dave, I agree, and they're going to need support, I think really below 5th grade. And they're going to need support at all the levels, but especially at those levels, there's going to be a log. They're going to have to log in. They're going to have to access Google Classroom, those things.
Are those some of the things that maybe we don't have our YouTube channel and do some? Basically, you look up everything you need to work on. You're going to go to YouTube and try to find out how to work it. Is that something we just start putting some videos out there? Hey, we're navigating how this is how you log on. This is how you do this.
Sure.
I think those are things that should be taught the first week they're back too.
Well,
in case we would have to go, like we need to make sure those little kids understand how to use them. I mean, I couldn't get mine on.
I need all the help I can get.
In hearing the teachers talk about it.
I can address this. I'm already working on all the videos and tutorials and handouts that will go home. Training the teachers, making sure that they have the knowledge, talking to them, meeting with them, discussing if we're face-to-face right off the bat, teaching your students about everything you're using in the classroom right off the bat so they know what they're doing. But yeah, that's in the works.
Sweet. Thank you.
Yes,
thank you.
That's being done.
Okay, moving on to action items. Item A, consider approval of service agreement with Thrively Consultation.
Say that again, Randy. Come on. Come on. I know you can do it. Come on.
It's been a long day, believe me.
This is, and Katie, you can step into, this is a company we already have a contract with. They just changed names. So when they changed names, we wanted to represent the contract.
This is Learning Momentum.
Yep.
You signed this contract in June. They just changed their name, so we have to sign a new contract. So nothing has changed in the verbiage of the contract other than the name.
Do they have to do things like Missouri buys? Seems like every time I have a company I work with, they get bought out by somebody. They say, well, they're not registered with Missouri buys, so you can't use them. I said, I've been using them for 4 years.
It happens a lot with educational contractors, I will tell you that.
Well, I'll make a motion that we accept action item A.
Got a motion, need a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And on item B, consider approval of agreement with Missouri Baptist University School of Education.
So this covers us when we host our student teachers and our teachers in training who are observing. And then this also covers any type of dual enrollment. This is just a liability coverage, so you're covering yourself for whatever we contract with Missouri Baptist to provide.
Before we used them before, didn't we?
Yeah, we've done
but then
this.
before
We did this
that,
last
wasn't
year,
it?
and we do some through MAC, we do some
Right, okay.
CMC. We'll have all different contracts, but just covers everyone with liability insurance.
Okay, I need a motion to approve.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Moving on to item C, discuss and approve Board of Education goals.
Every year, we just always set goals of the board in those 6 areas. I updated from last year, put some new verbiage in. Obviously, we're still working on instruction, really looking to, for opportunities for our kids for social and emotional learning, and then district facilities, updated to include our bond. But this is just something that helps us provide focus. We can change it any way we want to. I thought it's a good guiding document.
Further discussion, need a motion to approve.
I make a motion to approve the board goals.
A motion?
Second.
A second, all in favor?
Aye.
Item E, approve teacher substitute hourly rate of pay.
No, we skipped D.
Oh, no, skip.
You skipped D.
That is E.
D.
Oh, D. Okay, for approved position, job description for extra duty educational technology resource specialist.
Okay, so on this, I shared the documents with you when you guys had questions about it. The thought process was, from the elementary administration, was that we would use some of our Title I funds. All right, we get allocated Title I funds each year. We use those funds to try to provide educational equity and to help any students that we can to have the best learning environment they possibly can. It's basically used to supplement, not supplant, all right, any monies that we have. So some of the money we already use for jobs, all right, and job descriptions. Some we use for supplies and different things. One thing we were talking about was taking some of the money from our supplies, transferring it to use for this educational technology resource specialist extra duty position. Thinking that we could possibly have someone that could be a resource overall, but also maybe have some resources in the buildings that would kind of learn from that. So for example, if we did have someone if we did use some of the strength we already have from secondary, and we said, hey, you're already doing these things on secondary, because this is the job description for secondary, we just reduced it. I went with the principals, I said, what's essential? Like if we look at what's essential. And then next year, we already have instructional coaches on the elementary level. We use a lot of retired teachers, is what we've used as 550 staff. In doing so, then we're able to have a little more resources, but we're probably going to be looking in the future at maybe taking this and combining it into a full-time position that maybe we share between buildings is one thing the principals and I have talked about. But for this year, to look at this and to say, okay, how can we maybe give some extra stipendary help to someone if they help us from the secondary level or some ones. And then also one thing we're going to ask them is if we have a few people in the elementary that would like to learn and be a resource at the building level, maybe they're not getting as much of a stipend, but they could learn from them, build some skills, and we could build up some future leadership in the elementary. Thinking then if they had a problem in the building and there wasn't anybody there, they could go to that person. They may go, well, I don't know, and they still have to reach out to the other folks on secondary level, but if they did, they can learn to kind of help themselves. So again, we were looking at using Title I funds for that. So you have a copy of the extra duty job description. Did you have any questions?
Well, I think you and I had talked before, Jason. I want to know how, okay, I guess my first question is, who would train these people?
Okay. So I think our first goal, Julie, would be to hire whoever from secondary. All right, we would look at our secondary folks and say, all right, who would be a good leader from secondary to help us? And then I would look at the secondary person and say, all right, we're going to have you help mentor and train these people at each building that we would have getting the smaller stipend, as well as helping with teachers. So what we're thinking, Julie, if we could have, let's say someone who's already training at secondary and already been doing this help, that'd be great. But if they're already working at high school, they're already working at middle school, then we've got someone in elementary, or like with these PD days that we're talking about, we might talk about enhancing. We've got someone that can help lead little trainings and have more social distancing going on, things like that. We're just trying to build up leadership. So the first key would be to get the secondary leadership person that would help us, and then I would ask them to kind of help train probably 3, Julie, is what we're thinking, 1 in each building, and we'll be getting a smaller stipend.
Okay, because I'm looking at 2 people right here that we already have on staff that we pay to do this. So why would we create another position with 2 people sitting here already doing it?
And what I'm saying is if it was one of the 2 that are sitting here, this could be an additional stipend for some of the extra work we would ask them to do. Does that make sense? So if we're asking them to help at the elementary, we'd say, all right, if you're going to help at the elementary, then this would be that stipend. And then we'd ask you to help train teachers, be a teacher of teachers, yes, but maybe also to help with a couple future leaders to kind of train them up a little bit as well. So we could have some help in the elementary buildings.
They're not looking to bring somebody else in. They're
Right.
talking about using these type of people.
But what I'm saying is if we're already paying them to do it, why not just give them the stipend
That's what he's saying.
to do it?
That's what he's saying.
That's,
Just to pick up a different building.
Right, we would,
But giving them some help.
we would give them a
Do
stipend,
it.
but then we would also identify elementary people that they would pour into to be the future them for elementary, because they are secondary. We need those same kind of resources to K-6.
so,
Neither one of you guys are elementary?
Not at this time,
Okay.
does that make sense?
not officially.
And have they helped elementary? Well, you just heard Jennifer
Yes.
say yes, she is.
I think-
And so, an option is.
I think our biggest thing was when this came out over an email or a text, it sounded like we were hiring we were going to add another position.
No.
And I think for most of us, we're pretty much,
Well, I think what it came down to, and to interrupt, and I'm sorry, but I'll lose my train of thought. I think after I had a conversation with Jason one-on-one, I think what this really boils down to is giving Eric and Jennifer some help so that they're not spread so thin. Ryan Long had made the statement that he really didn't feel like he could spare Eric to go to primary and that type of thing. And this was to take some of the burden off of them, but still have them basically in control of the program.
basically start a couple technical aids over at those schools and use them to primarily get everything
It's a long
going.
process,
Right.
you know, it doesn't happen
We had
overnight.
even talked a little bit about rewriting job descriptions of what these two do now to accommodate for some of the instructional thing that they would have to do. So I think a lot of it was lost in the email or the text that we all got. Probably wasn't the best way to introduce it to some of us that didn't understand exactly what it was. I think it came across a lot better when we got to talk one-on-one about it. I know I understood it a lot better, because I was like Dave when it first came out. I'm like, no, we're not doing another position. We're struggling to fund the positions we have now. But I think I
But
understood it a
essentially, we
whole
are
lot
going to
better.
fund another position.
But we're using it Title I.
Eventually,
Well,
right.
eventually.
I can-
At this time.
Yeah.
I can
We're
help
gonna
you with
use the
that
money
too,
we already have.
too, a little bit,
Already,
Dave.
yeah.
What we're looking for this extra duty would be about 10 to 15,000. What I just found out this week was through some of our county CARES Act funds that we got awarded, we're gonna get reimbursed for some of the title money we already put in supplies. I used some of that to get Go Guardian protective software cases, which are on back order until who knows when.
Yeah.
Different things. So that's gonna help with the supply money. So it's not CARES Act money, to be clear, it's title money. If we did do that next year, and I'm just front loading, if we decide we don't want to, that's fine. But what I would think we would do, Dave, is this. And I respect our instructional coaches tremendously. They have been a godsend to our district. They've done a great job. The part-time instructional coach has been hugely valuable. I remember being a building administrator before you had that, and getting someone like that retired teacher that knew how to be a coach. I'm not supervising you. I'm just here to help and be guidance for you. To go out and get you the resources you struggle so hard to get, you know, when you're teaching in the classroom, and help make that job easier. That's been great. But no disrespect, but that's not, someone like me that's been doing this 25 years is not what we're looking for in this. I'm not saying you can't be a 25-year veteran, but you got to be someone who's very tech savvy now. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
You have to be the great instruction person too, which is but you also have to be very, so I think it's almost looking like we've got to look to invest in those people now. You know what I mean? Those people that have tech interest now, so they can learn from a Jennifer, they can learn from an Eric, they can learn from other people. So I think what my goal would be with this stipend, and that's what, and I'm sorry if it wasn't clear, would it be an extra duty? And one reason I shared it in an email is because PD days, you saw how quick the PD days went. Those PD days hit the first 4 days, and then we had 2 left. So my thought process was if we could have, that's the reason I put it there. When I was talking to the principals, and we realized how virtual instruction was just expanding so quickly on the elementary level, we're like, what can we do to help these elementary teachers that have never taught virtually to be as best prepared as possible for August 24th and the start of school? And so that's why I thought, well, because I didn't want to give a stipend without you guys knowing and approving it. And so that's why I put it as an extra duty. Does that make sense? Just a stipend. And so that's where the funds would come for this year. But in the future, what we would probably do, Dave, instead of having a 550 position of primary and a 550 position at intermediate, which is what we have now, maybe we look at combining that, have one person. It's shared between a couple buildings. And title money fluctuates. You know, if our title money goes down, we might not be able to afford it. If our title money goes up, you know, or stays the same, that would be something.
So do you have people that's interested in doing this?
To be honest with you, Julie, I'm really relying on the principals there. I'm kind of saying, what I would do is I would ask them to kind of post this, say, if you have an interest, let me know. And then I just did an extra duty for buses. I posted it throughout the bus supervision. I didn't have a wealth of people say, I want to do it. You know, I think I got one, you know. But you'd post it, say, are you interested? I am. And then they would interview with the principal. Principal would decide who they want to use for.
Did you talk to either one of these guys though to see how this would affect them, or if they were even interested in helping train these people?
I'll be honest, I spoke with Jennifer. I did not speak with Eric, and it was no disrespect to Eric, but two things. One, I didn't feel comfortable speaking to someone about a position before it was posted outside of an interview situation. I don't feel like that's probably, I don't feel like that's our best practice to do that. But the other is I did speak with Jennifer a little bit because I wanted to get her take, her opinion. Like if she's like, I don't want to do this, you know, I have no interest in helping elementary. That's not what I got. But what I did get, Jennifer can speak for herself too, since she's here, is I would do this. And our contracts do say additional duties as assigned by administrator. But she is kind of like, I'm going to be putting in a lot of extra time that was not in her job description.
I put in 16 hours now. So, but I do it because that's what I love doing. This is what I want to do. So does that make sense to say we can do a stipend for someone who is going to be a secondary? Because I think to have someone from secondary help, they should get a stipend. And then I would like to maybe give a smaller stipend to someone at intermediate, so they could be a go-to initially. You can email them, say you got a question, yeah, I can help you. You know, they can include whoever else.
So that would be extra on top of their teaching duties. So if you've got somebody that's stuck on virtual or whatever, and that teacher's in the middle of teaching virtual, what happens? Where do they go? Because we're not utilizing Jennifer, we're going to utilize this person.
Well, we could still utilize a that secondary person. I'm just saying if they're available, you know, we could. And they could be a resource for when they're not teaching or when they are teaching. It would be an extra duty. It's like the bus supervisory position that we did the other day. Okay. It's an extra duty. Somebody makes a little bit extra money, and they do that after school. They could answer some of these things after school. Maybe I'm on plan. Could you wait till my plan? My plan's at 10:30, Julie. I can't. I'll be there to help you. It's my plan time. I'm using it for other things, but I'm going to go ahead and use it for this. Or I'll email you back after school and help you. I'm not saying they can't use the other person. I'm just saying we're just trying to train the trainer model. That's all I was kind of thinking.
So are you okay with training someone? I mean, when you and Jason had your conversation, did you say I'm not interested in this?
Have I said I am or I'm not?
Have you said I'm not interested?
No, I've not said I was not interested. But when I came in, I mean, I've been training teachers in each building as teacher leaders for technology in each building that I've worked with up to this point. You know, Eric
obviously I was one.
Has been somebody that, I mean, because this is year 27, I'm training him to be me when I leave. So my job is to make sure he knows everything I know before I do go. I call them Power Rangers. They laugh, but they all are very, I mean, they are my leaders in each one of the buildings, and they do, when I do PD days, those people are the ones, I've trained them to know as much as they can know in their, and I try to pick pods or hallways where I train the teachers. So it's already happening. They're not getting stipends for it. They're just doing it because they want to. You know, the goal of mine coming into the district was that eventually I would be K-12 and working with everybody. You know, I don't, even though I have been middle high school up to this point, I've always helped anybody that's asked for the assistance up to this point. Sure. So is Eric. I know what you said about Dr. Long. He doesn't want him assigned to a building. Like right now, I'm also the instructional coach at Parkside. So I have days scheduled in my week for this year where I will be going to Parkside part of the time and doing PLCs and training and stuff. He doesn't want Eric assigned to a building, but he said it's okay for him to go to Unitech, go to Primary, go to those places and assist them, but not be assigned to be in their buildings.
And I've done that.
And we've
several
done
times.
that.
Yeah.
One thing we've done is this year, he's no longer teaching in the classroom. His office and my office, we combined so that we can tackle the district together and divvy out the jobs that come in and the requests that are made from each of the building principals. You know, we haven't seen how that works yet, but so far, like, we've been able to pretty much take the jobs and split them in half, and you tackle these, I tackle, and we don't even, it doesn't matter which building they're in, it's, you take care of these problems, I'm taking care of these, and, you know, helping the teachers and make sure they have whatever they have. We're working on an EdTech handbook with resources in it for K-12, videos, we're building the website, because we're working on building the new website for the district. But we're doing this together. But like I said, I've already picked out people in Parkside that I'm going to be training to make sure that they can also assist and help. None of them, I mean, a stipend is great. You know, anything they can do extra. What worries me is when teachers are struggling with technology, they need somebody to come there immediately and help them, or they get frustrated and they put the technology to the side and they go back to teaching traditional. I don't want teachers sitting struggling if a teacher's not available to go assist them, like you said a second ago. I mean, sometimes they can't wait for a planning period. If we're not allowed to go there when they need us, you know, depending on how this goes.
And I've been that person too. I've been the person that's in the classroom who has been approached, hey, can I do this? And I couldn't immediately because I had my own.
So like when I'm out of the building and he was teaching class, they would come to him while he was teaching, like you just said, hey, I need help, and he couldn't help them. Having us both open to being able to get out there. I just worry about those teachers who, I mean, if you give a stipend, technically, you know, if they're teaching class, are they going to really be able to help? I don't know. That bothers me just a little bit, just because I don't want anybody to struggle.
But it sounds like you already have this in place. The only difference is now we're going to pay those people. So your Power Rangers are going to be your people in those buildings.
But just in the elementary.
I think it comes down to, the job's going to get done. We've got hard workers.
Right.
You know, we've got Power Rangers, we've got hard workers, we've got.
Sorry, that's just a term I use and they like it, so that's all that matters.
You've got Jennifer and Eric that are tremendous. Again, I want to make sure we do a good job personnel-wise in opening up, if we do open an extra duty and how we talk about it. But let's say a secondary person is that, it's just a matter of do we give them a stipend or not? Because the work's going to get done. New teachers are.
Jennifer's working 16 hours a day, why not pay her the stipend if she's that person that wants it, whatever.
Right.
And if she wants to be on the interview process to get her Power Rangers in other buildings.
I would say that would be a very good idea. I think if you're going to ask a secondary person or secondary people, I mean, I'm open to it. What I am going to say is once we set them out for the stipend, once that's divided up, that's how we divide it up. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So, yeah, so I mean, a secondary person's coming in, like what I would do, to recommend the principals, and I think what they will do, is get the secondary person first. Like, all right, who's gonna help? Okay, and then once you get that, then you look at that. And they're exactly right. I mean, it is tough. Eric did that for a long time.
And I mean, I'm sorry to interrupt, but he needs to be also compensated because he is your next me, and, you know.
We share a brain half the time.
Yeah, but I mean, when we tackle this, we tackle it together, and I need to know he's taken care of because I'm putting all my effort into making sure he can be your leader in technology at some point. So I need to know he's taken care of as well. Not just, not just myself. You know, it needs to be him too.
Package deal.
Okay. But with everything going virtual too, they're going to spread you guys really thin.
And
you're going to need those extra people.
But it's nothing that we can't, you know, we definitely tackle things.
Yeah, but we don't want to expect you to do that. You shouldn't have to work here. If you have another couple people that can feel
My
some of
plate
that
is
smaller
not full
stuff,
yet. My plate
maybe
is
if
not
we all
full.
go virtual.
We've done it, and my plate is not full. I can do it.
It sounds like we just need to make this
He can do it.
a Ranger
Team. You're a little better
Ranger.
at plate management than some people are.
I am efficient. I can multitask very well.
My
Okay.
concern's not this year. Where are we going in the future?
I think this is a one-year situation, then we look at the title money on how we do. That's what we do with our instructional coaches anyway, Dave. They all know going in, it's a one-year situation. We just posted the instructional coaches again. We always do that around August, and it seems odd that they're retirees. We might try to post it a little earlier if we're gonna go with something else. But I've tried to communicate very well with everybody who's working under a title fund that is a year by year depending on the federal funding. Now, you can look back for years on what we've received, and it's been pretty consistent. So I think the instructional coaching is something we'd be able to offer, but if we offered that as a full-time, they need to know, hey, this is for this 1 year, and we'll take it as it goes, if we go that way. And again, I don't want to get the cart ahead of the horse. This is to try to get us through this year with this situation.
So we're not locked into this
No, ma'am.
for the rest of our lives?
It's like the bus duty. If I don't need the kids at that area, we don't hire another bus duty person. It's just an extra duty. We need it, it's there. If we don't, it's not.
Just be patient with me, Jason, I'm new, I'm trying to learn.
Yeah.
When this all came about, for more clarity, I contacted the two elementary principals, and I asked their opinions on this, and both of them basically said the same thing. And initially, they both thought that their teachers within their buildings, they could probably get a volunteer to do this. And almost at the same point in the conversation, individually, they said, the volunteers get tired, and they don't want to do it anymore, and they kind of fade a little bit. So the consensus of each conversation that I had with them is this is probably the best way to go with the stipend, because then they're paid to do the work and that kind of thing. And
They should be rewarded, they should be.
And they don't change their minds. But they both felt like that the quality of people that they have for teachers, they thought they would get somebody that would step up and say, hey, I'll volunteer to do that.
Sure.
The volunteers, they get overused, and then they get tired of it, and they may not tell you that they don't want to do it anymore, and then it festers in them, and they feel like they're being abused even though they volunteered for it. So they both felt like this was probably the way to go with the stipend and use as needed.
My other thought is if we're doing most of this because of COVID, they share an office. One of them is exposed, they're both now exposed, we have no one.
That's right.
Yeah. Kind of like our nurses. Our nurses are probably going to be infected at some point in time, and then we're going to have a really, really hard time getting.
That doesn't happen either of you, but reality is we've all been
Gonna have to put the plexiglass between you.
I just want you to know, when you're talking instructional coaches, they get paid from federal funds. It's not like that is all title fund. And he didn't say that originally, I didn't want somebody to think, wait,
They share a brain,
all
that's
title
it.
fund.
Yeah.
No, I didn't have a problem with what you were putting out. It just, we needed this discussion.
Sure.
because, I mean,
Well, I apologize. I didn't realize it would be such a red button. I thought, hey, we'll get it out and then we can get going and be ready for the first day of PD. However, I mean, I'm glad to give clarity there, and like I said, it's completely up to you.
Really
You guys,
understood, especially the new ones we didn't know a lot of things we don't know yet.
well, like I
I
said,
still the same way. I don't know.
They don't know a lot yet either.
All right, do we know enough about this topic?
Yes.
I make a motion that we move forward on it.
And I will second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Now moving on to E, approved teacher substitute hourly rate of pay.
So years ago, you used to do this as a district. In fact, as a teacher, I did this often. However, it kind of went by the wayside. In these times, it may be necessary for our own staff to use the preparatory period to go sub for someone else in the building. So I'm just asking for permission to approve that we do that, and we pay a rate of $15 per hour to those people for doing so.
I would make a motion that we adopt.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye. Now, are we gonna do like the states come up with that they don't have to have any education to be a
No.
substitute?
Just 20 hours of online training.
We're trying to avoid that, thank you.
That's a nightmare for you. Just so you know.
Item F, approved contract for student vision services.
So this is very simple. The Missouri School of the Blind does not provide these services anymore, so we do have to contract those out for our students. So this is for our special needs students, and
I'll make
another
that
one.
motion that we approve item F.
I'll second
All in favor?
Aye.
Moving on to G, consider resolution authorizing the issuance and sale of $10 million general obligation bond series 2020.
We finally get to you. Brad, it's good to put you at the first of the list, had to put you at the end.
It's very nice to see you all again. I want to start off by congratulating you on your success at the June 2nd election with 78% voter approval. We do have the first installment of $10 million of the $13.5 million of general obligation bonds sold to investors subject to approval of the resolution this evening. I'm pleased to report that 250,000 of the bonds were purchased by New Era Bank, and then 750,000 were purchased by First State Community Bank, and so that's always helpful to achieve competitive interest rates with the low yields, but then also maintaining that short call feature of 5 years, March 1st, 2025, for flexibility to refinance or prepay. So we'll go ahead and go through the packet of information and just touch on some of the highlights. As you're aware of, I know there's new board members from the election, but earlier this year, a few months back, we were out and pursued the refunding that saved about $230,000 to boost your total savings from refundings to almost 10 million, 9 million, 9.6, I believe, in total. So this market that we're in has remained very favorable that we first noticed back in March, April with that refunding. The Federal Reserve, due to COVID, has committed to keeping interest rates very low to support the economy. And because of that support from the Federal Reserve lowering interest rates, it's created the most favorable market in the municipal bond market that we've ever seen. The main benchmark we like to track is that 10-year U.S. Treasury note. Since January 1st, 1960, that's averaged 6%, and currently we're at about 0.6%. So it's about 10 cents on the dollar, and the greatest bond market we've seen, the lowest rates in over 60 years. So it's worked out, the timing wise of when we first started these projections. Obviously we couldn't have ever foreseen all of these events transpiring, but it has created a very favorable interest rate environment for this financing. We've got an executive summary on the packet. That's the first handout. In yellow is the $10 million piece that's subject to board approval this evening. The reoffering premium that we can lock in this evening is $1,745,886. That's about $1 million more than we would have anticipated about a year and a half ago when we first started running these projections. And as the rates have gone down, it's gotten better and better to where, our last update was August 14th, and it's actually 12,000 more premium than that time. So it's been very advantageous to generate that reoffering premium. So the net proceeds that will be deposited to your construction fund when the financing closes, which would be September 3rd, would be $11,615,668. And then we've got below that the projections for the second piece of $3.5 million, of another $675,000 of premium on that piece, for a total premium paid by the investors of $2.4 million, which would bring the total proceeds available for construction to $15,737,000. And then on the far right hand side, we just ran projections if we could refinance the premium bonds on the 5-year call date to a 3% interest rate, what sort of savings would that generate if rates remain favorable for the foreseeable future? And that would be $2.3 million on the first piece, $460,000 on the second, for $2.8 million in potential savings if rates stay low for the next 3 to 5 years. On the next page, titled Schedule 6, is the proposed debt service schedule for the $10 million general obligation bonds. The date column, first date is listed September 3rd, the closing date of the financing. And then the maturities, we started with the back end first, 2035 to 2040. The remaining $3.5 million will slide in just before those. and it's structured to go behind your existing bond payments to fit within the revenues from your debt service fund levy. So the total maturities are 10 million, 2035 to 2040. You'll notice the coupon or interest rate is all 5%, and that's due to the premium sale. But based on the premium paid by the investors, your effective rate based on those yields is 1.016%, highlighted in yellow. And the details on that are on the next page, on page 2, Schedule 6A, the pricing summary. So on the left-hand side of the page, the third column in from the left-hand side, we have the coupon column, all at 5%. But then we have those yields that are priced to the 5-year call date that are just 0.9% to 1.06%. To the right of those is the maturity value column that the district repays. But to the right of the maturity value column is the price column, which is what the investor's paying. So the investor's paying that price above 100%, 118 to 117, times your maturity values of 10 million. And when we multiply those two, we get the first column on the far right-hand side of the page, the dollar price column. The investor's paying the district $11,745,886. The district's only repaying 10 million, so you're keeping that $1,745,000. And essentially, just to recap on what a premium is it's essentially the investors just buying a higher interest rate from the district. In addition to local banks, banks in Missouri are the main purchasers of school bonds. And so when we're at an all-time low interest rate environment like this on a 20-year financing, if banks in Missouri commit at a rate of 0.7%, and if the economy improves and rates start to tick back up to more normal levels to where within 3 or 4 years they're back up to 3 or 4%, if a bank locked in at 0.7% for 20 years and loan demand went up and they needed to free up cash and wanted to sell your bonds 4 years from now when rates are higher, other investors would say, I don't want that bond that pays 0.7%, rates pay 3 or 4% now, so they'd have a big loss if they needed to get out of it. So they pay for that higher interest rate to insulate themselves. If rates go back up, a 5% bond is easier for them to sell than a 0.7 if rates stabilize going forward. The YTM column to the right of the price column stands for yield to maturity. That's the worst case scenario. If you're never able to refinance or prepay these bonds, factoring in that 1.7 million of premium paid to the district by the investors, your effective interest rates would be 3.4 to 3.7%. But if we can refinance or prepay on that call date, your effective rate will just be 0.9% to 1.06%. The next page is the debt service to maturity and call report, which just highlights that these bonds have that opt-out feature for the district, the call feature of March 1st, 2025. And then we have the sources and uses of funds on Schedule 6C. Highlighted in yellow is the piece that's being locked in this evening, the first 10 million of that 1,745,000 premium, the cost of issuance, and then the net amount, the 11,615,000 deposited to your bank account on September 3rd. The next sheet of paper, the legal size sheet, is the statement of cash flows. In light green, we have the revenues that are derived from the district's $1.21 debt service fund levy. Then in light blue, we have all of the payments on the district's outstanding general obligation bonds. And the two columns we like to focus in on are the purple column and then the dark blue, and we've actually blown those two columns up on the next page just so that we can all see them a bit better. Yeah, it's hard to see otherwise. So the purple column is your balances in your debt service account that are left over after you've made all of your payments on all of your bond issues each year. And then in dark blue, we have all those payments totaled. So for this year, 2.2 million, and then upcoming payments of 2.4 and 2.6, with all 13.5 million added into the picture. And then as we work our way down that purple column, you'll notice by about 2024-25, your balance will be $2,189,000. Then your total payments going down start to fall off a bit. So within about 5 years is when you're in position for your next no tax increase general obligation bond issue. And another important factor is we're just assuming a 1% growth rate in assessed valuation. So if you grow more than 1% in assessed valuation, or if we refinance some of these bonds, that would probably be sooner than 5 years from now. And we went ahead and ran some calculations with this assumption. You're currently at the $13.5 million is approaching your legal bonding capacity. As you pay off bonds, you'll reestablish more capacity. So in about 5 years, when your balances support that next issue, your legal capacity that you could afford to do all as a no tax increase 5 years from now is about $10 million. The next legal size sheet of paper is the comparison of interest rates to see how your rates stack up to some of the other financings in Missouri. In addition to the rates, we also like to pay attention to the length of the call features. So we have your proposed rates, the 5% coupon with the reoffered yields of 0.9 to 1.06 compared to Excelsior Springs School District. Those underwritten by Stiefel, they had a similar 5% structure, but their yields were 1.29, 1.33, 1.37, and 1.48. And also their call features 5 years further out, March 1st, 2030 at par. And then we have some other financings underwritten by our firm in blue, and then Stiefel as well. Some of the schools have 5% structures. Loandell was one of the financings we did where they didn't really need as much premium. The smaller bond issues, they're at 2%. So overall, we feel we were able to get very competitive yields while still preserving that short call feature of just 5 years. And that's due in large part to the support from New Era Bank and First State Community Bank that really gets the ball rolling on better rates with that short call feature. Are there any questions at all to this point? I'll just briefly touch on the last few handouts. We have a copy of the closing procedures, which specifies the flow of funds on the September 3rd closing date, when the money will be wired to the district's bank account at First State Community Bank. Then we have a copy of the official statement, which is the prospectus that we send out to all the potential investors. Includes operating and financial information on the district, largest taxpayers, largest employers. It also includes a copy of the district's most recent audited financial statements. Then we have a copy of the resolution, which is the legal document for board consideration this evening. The first page inside the document, half of it's all capital letters, just notes that this resolution authorizes the issuance and sale of the $10 million of bonds. It also has in that capital letter section the ballot language, noting the projects. Some of the discussion earlier about equipment and some of the language. We do have in that ballot language replace kitchen equipment, install new playground equipment, but then we also have at the back end complete other repairs and improvements to existing facilities of the district, which provides some flexibility for some of those other projects that you were discussing earlier. We also have the language to prepay the lease financing that we did in 2019 to reimburse proceeds that were spent on the athletic complex, so that these bonds will be able to pay that financing off, which is about $2.5 million, factoring in the interest expense as well. In total, these bonds will pay off that $2.5 million of lease certificates, and then it's about $600,000 of interest that won't be paid by the operating fund. So in total, the bonds paying off that lease will free up about $3.1 million of operating funds for the district as well. So that will be very helpful for your budget going forward. And last but not least, we have a draft news release highlighting the district's success at the June 2nd election. Notes the New Era Bank and First State Community Bank for their purchase of the bonds. Highlights the historic low reoffered yields of just 0.9 to 1.06%. and that extra premium to provide support above and beyond that limit where we were at with 13.5 million on the legal capacity. So it's nice to get 750 to probably $1 million more than we first anticipated way back a year and a half ago. So that should be very helpful, I hope, for your projects. Are there any questions at all?
The other bonds will be done in the spring.
They can be done, and so we do it 10 million limit on the new issue in a calendar year, so they're bank qualified, and that allows banks who purchase the bonds to deduct 80% of the carrying costs they use to buy it. So if they use money from customers' CDs that they're paying out, they can deduct 80% of what they're paying out on CDs for the money they put up if they're 10 million or less in a year. So we could issue the other 3.5 million as soon as the first week of January, so in about just 3 or 4 months, or we could delay it. That's actually a really great question. We could delay it to March, April, whenever you would need it. If you don't need it as soon as the first week of January, that's just to be outside of this calendar year. But we could issue it whenever you need it by splitting it up too. In addition to the benefit of being bank qualified, you save about $90,000 of interest expense by not starting the tab running on all 13.5 million at one time. So we can be flexible anytime in 21 for that remaining 3.5.
All good news.
It is all good news. It's very good news. We need to approve it, yeah.
I'll make a motion.
Need a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you all very much for your time.
Thank you.
Brad, be safe.
Sorry you had to be here so late.
Oh, I don't mind at all.
Hey, I had nothing to do with putting you that low.
Dave, did I give you everything signed for
I
you?
don't think Randy's signed any of that.
Yeah, Randy's probably still.
Oh, this one's not mine. I'm not sure what this is. Oh, the account agreement. Yeah, that one's not.
Yeah, we'll get Randy to take care of that.
Yeah.
Yep.
Big one. No, you're on there.
I thought I signed the bottom.
I won't break it.
Okay, moving on to H, consider approval of Insight Design Studio contract for bond-related architectural services. Any questions? Now I need a motion to put Insight.
I make that motion.
Or a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Consider approval of Great Circle contract.
Plain and simple, you approved this contract 1 month ago, or last time we met, but they have changed locations. They have a local location now, and so we need to reapprove it.
No, that's not it.
No, this is a different.
It's
no.
great.
This is Great Circle.
Do you want that done in blue?
This is the
Or
former
in
Alex Center.
black?
Oh, geez,
Right,
sorry.
so
doesn't matter.
the Alex Center, it has changed locations, but
It
we
is
have
on.
not gotten this
I
approved
told you
yet.
to.
Okay, I'm sorry. I thought it was the same
No,
one.
this is not Mrs. Eaton. This
Okay.
is our secondary program for substance abuse students when they need to go to a facility for education outside of our own, during long-term drug suspensions, things like that. So we've done this in the past. It's just now called Great Circle like our other services.
Okay, I need a motion to approve.
I make a motion we approve this contract with Great Circle.
Second. Have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Consider approval of construction manager at risk.
So on Tuesday night, we had a committee meet, and we had 3 bids turned in. The committee interviewed all 3 that turned in. Myself, Randy, Alan, Givo, and Tony Sales served on that committee. And what it is they came in, it's a point scale, and they look at what would it cost for us to use them to manage all of those projects and oversee. Now, construction manager at risk is unique in the sense that by statute, it's not like the old school construction manager. they can bid on projects. So they can bid on projects within.
Bid on their own project?
They can bid, they can oversee
Since-
and bid.
They called it self-perform.
Correct.
They can self-perform as
Correct.
much as.
Houston might be able to do that.
There's a
They
certain
said-
percentage of it.
Correct.
They can't do it all,
Correct.
but they can do it.
And all of them, and we had them ask, we asked them questions about local business. We thought it was very important, you know, what percent of the business can you keep local and make sure that you stay within ours. And so, the whole committee of 5 talked, ranked, and it's our recommendation that the board would like to do so. We would recommend Brock Miller Construction to provide that service for us. Brock Miller is local, has a long-standing history with our school district, and
Randy, what'd you think when you went to that the other night?
They were all, could have done the job all.
I mean, Aberuzzi,
They're all
thank you.
qualified. And
Thank you.
like
Appreciate
they've
it.
see you,
done
bud.
For the last 5 years, they've all done vestibules. I mean, that's been a big, so they're all qualified to do everything we needed done. The Wilson Company was very close. It boiled down probably between those two. Kind of hard to do the math, to see who's, you know, they did everything on percentages because they don't even know what their, you know, projects are going to be yet. But even breaking that all down and figuring performance bonding and everything, Brock Miller probably was under slightly.
It was very close. Each one of them that came in, their presentations were very, very well done. And every one of them had aspects that were very unique to their
business,
to their niche, and that things that they did. Alvarezzi, obviously huge company, and consequently, when they came in, their base number, each of them had basically a base number, and then the percentages on top of that. Their base number was more than the other two combined. So they were extremely high as far as that. So it really boiled down to Wilson and Brock Miller. Brock Miller, I think, was more detailed on what they were going to do locally on subcontractors, plus their own people that are local, obviously. So we really felt that there was a big need to stay in that realm. But when it came down to the money, when you factored everything in, like Randy said, even with the performance bonds, on the total amount that they were talking about, I mean, they were within a couple $1,000s. I mean, everything was that close. Now, that Wilson Company, I will say, they had something that was really, really unique to them. They almost had like a Unitech type program where they had I think they called it Skills or something
Skilled.
like that, a skilled program, where they would let students come on job site and actually help with the building of the projects and things like that for work experience for kids that may not be going to college and things like that.
Lotec could have shadowed those guys a few days, you know.
Which would have been great, but when we broke it down to the money, the local aspect, the quality of work that we know that Brock Miller does, it really wasn't a hard choice at all to go to say Brock Miller was our one.
I guess that's something else we could also ask Brock Miller if we do award that to them. Would they mind having our Unitech do a little shadowing it during different times?
That would be something to really, that would benefit our students a lot, and the students from the cooperative districts too.
Do they have time frame if they complete a project ahead of schedule? Is part of that contract allow them to that we pay them more?
What they're doing is a little different than like building from the ground up. You know, it's right now it's impossible to do a schedule. I think, you know, definitely it is right now. But
right,
the kind of work and the time frame they're going to be working into. What do we have? 3 years?
3 years.
And it's going to take apparently 3 years to get it all done because of the way they have to work with schedules.
So it's kind of hard for them to have, you know, deadlines. They could still come up with something like that, but I would doubt it.
And he was incredibly detailed with what he'd done and the ins and outs of money and timelines, and he gave very specific details of previous projects.
How much did they work with the design company as far as
that did
5 projects have they done so far?
All 3 of them have worked with Insight, and Brock Miller had done 5.
So they're
They're very familiar,
Mhm.
very.
They did
They
Perry
do the names of the people.
Jackson together.
They do the names of the people from Insight that they would be working with, and they named off the same people that have been in here. So they're very, very familiar with them.
That was one of my questions to them, how well they do them. And
Yeah, and none of the three bidders had any issues at all with Insight. They all had very good things to say about Insight.
Good deal.
Nothing else, I need a motion to approve Brock Miller Construction. Construction risk.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And I abstain.
Okay, we got one abstain.
I abstain from that vote. Have a potential conflict, so I have to abstain.
Get one abstain, directed, roll call.
He can announce it. I don't, not, you don't have to open. I think in open, he can just abstain in open, correct? Yeah.
I mean, I'm not.
Consider approval of transitioning to MSBA policy. Oh, I missed that one. I had my glasses on.
So, we talked about, Randy brought this up a few months ago, looking at MSBA policy. It would be a completely fresh policy start. So what they would do is they would, there's a questionnaire I'd share with you guys before. We have to answer all of those questions, go through, figure out what we want. What would dictate the price would be how much do we want standard policy and how much do we want unique policy to our school district. And so, well, I'm make sure I say her name right. What she had recommended was that we go with a fresh policy start and then add our stuff into it as we go along. And so for that start, it would be $4,200 for the transition. That gives you access to all of MSBA's benefits, which includes legal counsel. So if you have a question about policy or something else and you don't want to spend the money to call your attorney, you can reach out to theirs and talk to them. It's very robust, very good. It's a different approach. MSBA is much more detailed than MCE, and it's going to come very, very, here's what you do, here's what you don't do. It's very scripted. But they also update very, very often. So MSBA will send a fall and a spring update to several policies. And so it's a very good service. Randy, I think you had experience with it before here, correct?
Yeah, we've had them before in the past, and whenever you do your new training, you'll see, you already have, they're very helpful. And Shirley, I know you didn't really want to have to go up there and do that, but it was pretty informational, wasn't it? They have those lawyers there. They bring in accountants. They bring in everything, explain a lot to you. Which you see it online, but they actually come in and do a little seminar type thing. But I don't know when that'll ever start again.
So there are two different costs. The first year, there's a setup fee, so it's $4,200 your first year. It's a $3,700 annual fee to continue to be a member and access their policy.
Okay. Other questions? I need a motion to approve the MSBA.
There's not a chance that we're in something that by us changing that it'll affect.
No, our current policies are provided free because of our relationship with our attorney. So we have the right to choose and select and change if we want.
But we're not in the middle.
We're not in a contract.
Some kind of a
conflict
conflict or something that
No.
by us changing,
No.
it's going to. No litigation or anything that.
No, we have no existing litigation.
He may start charging us more for attorney fees.
Well, true. I don't know about that. But
I would like to think not.
So what is the advantage to not go to this, to stay where we are?
Well, the advantage is
Cost? I mean, that's it.
The backside is several policies are from 1998. And they intentionally write their policies very vague. And then they obviously have the regulations, what they call them here, to go with them. MSBA has the same tools. They're gonna have policies. They're gonna have your procedures, what they call them, and then they're gonna have forms. They're gonna have the same three pieces. But really, it's just more robust and updated very frequently. I think it's probably the biggest benefit.
With the policies that MSBA has, do they have a social media policy?
They absolutely do.
Okay.
And here's a small example, and Katie and I talked about this at length. MSBA has already released their telework policy. So how do you help your employees who can't come into work? Well, MCE does not have that yet, and so they're already, they're trying to stay very forward. They have a much bigger team as well. They are the largest policy provider in Missouri, and so that's their focus.
Is there still a way on those policies if we wanted to add something specific to them?
Absolutely. There's a cost with it, but we can add and change whatever we want to about them. And when they come in, just like these come in, you can make any change. And I was telling Joan about this. You can make any change. We send that change to them, and instead of us uploading everything to our website, the MSBA link is there. Those are our policies, and in 24 hours it is updated. And so then your policies online are always updated, always fresh.
I'll make the motion, we go to MSBA.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
COVID leave 2020-2021.
Which brings us to this discussion. So also with staff absences and with quarantining, and this is already becoming quite a complicated situation with staff. Our attorneys have advised us to be very careful and handle this very delicately as to who you allow to work from home and who is not allowed. So right now what I am asking for is permission for those certified employees who are quarantined. They're not ill, they're able to work, they're just quarantined, to be able to work from home if they're able to perform their essential duties. I understand that that won't always be the case, but we do have several employees who we need them working, we rely upon them, and they are able to work from home and still help the district. And so that would it would just be an exception. They would not be charged leave. And that would not qualify for their 10 days, the 10 days under the Emergency Act. So that's all we're asking. They would fill out the form, they quarantine, they work from home, and we document it as such, but we do not charge them leave, and that does not go towards their free days that they get.
And if they got sick, they could then use them.
And they can and they can obviously go into FMLA or emergency FMLA or the COVID Act. They can go into those positions. We may have staff members basically who are quarantined several times within this school year.
Yeah.
So we have to think ahead, and we don't want to punish those people.
It'd be very fluid, I think, for us, which direction it changes.
Does this apply to all employees?
No, sir. This would only apply to certified employees, so it would be teachers and administrators. At this time, I have no guidance on classified because of their job duties. For instance, custodians cannot work from home, and bus drivers cannot work from home. Some secretaries can perform essential duties at home, and some cannot. So what the attorney said was, if you can't do for one, don't do it. You can do your certified, but don't get into classified if you can't do it for all of your classified groups.
Okay, but what about if, say it's not necessarily a person that would be able to work from home, but they have to be out because of...
So they still have 10 days. Everyone
They have to
under
use
this
their own
act,
days?
no sir. Right now, up until December 31st, we are under the COVID Act, which means we can allow all employees of the school district 10 days or 80 hours.
That's what I'm saying.
And that does not count against their leave.
Don't go
Right.
against their...
No.
Yeah.
Right.
How do we monitor them working from home? How do you
Well,
know?
that's not going to be easy. But usually, I will just tell you, these situations have already arisen. They, of course, are not under this until this is approved. But it's very evident who is working from home. The emails, the phone calls, they're having Zoom meetings, they're doing things online, working with their fellow staff members. So.
And they could even be teaching their class.
Sure, if you're teaching virtually
they're live
already.
streaming them, or they're teaching the lessons.
I just want to be prepared for when
It happens.
the bomb drops again. Yeah.
When school was out in the spring, obviously my wife works in the SPED department. The SPED department is a little different than others. I have come to find out because I've heard a lot about it. And we had an office basically set up in our sunroom, and she was in there, long days and evenings. I mean, they have to work, and because there's so many deadlines that have to be met with the SPED program that people aren't aware of. And it's a different secretarial position than anything else, and it has to be done. That's like with this thing coming up. I mean, she's got issues with not being able to work as much as some of the other secretaries in the next 2 weeks.
Right.
She's gonna need to work more than what they do because there's things at the beginning of the year that have to be done in that SPED department that aren't done in other secretarial positions.
Now, Kate,
Uh-huh.
who is going to track the COVID hours? Or do we have a way?
We do.
To track
So,
those?
Cassie Brower and I work together on FMLA.
Okay.
We do that regularly, so we've taken this on too, and we're tracking this. And it's just basic documentation. Then payroll will track the leave. But she and I are tracking the documentation from the health department for all of our staff members and for this type of leave. So
Okay.
it will be through she and I.
Okay.
Are we gonna get, like, people that go out for a COVID leave that aren't working from home? Will the CARES Act, are we gonna be able to apply to the CARES Act for their wages?
So they're 10 days, they're 10 days, they do get paid for that. And we could claim that if we need to and say, hey, we're paying that out of here because of COVID.
Or if you have to start paying a lot of substitutes.
Yes.
That would fall under the CARES Act?
If it's all quarantined.
How long, do you know how long we're gonna be able to apply into the CARES Act?
So right now, all that money must be spent by the end of this year, December.
At least ask for.
Correct, yes, that's being encumbered by that time, correct. And that's also when, like Katie said, that's also when that leave ends. So in the spring, unless it were extended, they would not qualify for that coverage. But could still qualify for telework.
Yes, absolutely. This just covers us to get us through the school year.
Well, that CARES money is handled through the county.
So it's handled through county. There's also some state grants you can write that you can pull into. But right now, and each county is doing it differently. St. Francis is having 3 grant cycles. Jefferson's having 1 grant cycle.
That's what I wondered.
Yeah, so that's how it's
that
different.
balance was with the county or whatever, you know, is it all gone now?
No. So I went to the commission meeting because I knew they were going to talk about it, and they've spent 40%. So basically, all those that applied originally represent just a hair under 40% of their total allocation.
Okay, I need a motion to approve COVID leave.
I'll make a motion.
I will second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Consider approval of a contract with the Central, did I do that already?
Nope, you're good.
Yeah, Central Deaf Institute for the Deaf. Any comments on that or?
Any questions about that?
Questions? I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Discuss and consider the school start date and instructional delivery format.
So obviously we took care of a lot of this yesterday, but Katie, Jason, and I did get together today and looked at possibilities for making all of those days up. So how do we avoid from going to June? How do we make sure that we maximize the calendar we have? After we sat down and analyzed dates, we sent to all of our principals for feedback, and then sent to our two teacher representative groups, both NEA and MSTA, for feedback. And everybody said it was a very reasonable response. Really, what it does is it allows us to start the 8th. It allows us to take a couple of PD days that were in the calendar and turn them into student instructional days. It allows us to take 3 days from spring break and then add 4 days at the end, and this covers all the days. Also, what it does to make sure that none of our teachers work outside their 177 required days, what we would do is we would implement this calendar, and over the next 2 weeks, they would work with their building administrators to do 21 hours of professional development to prepare for both virtual instruction and regular school year. And they would need those 21 hours to meet their 177 days for the year. And those are the only days they'd be required to work in the next 2 weeks.
Are there still snow days built in?
So the reason it's so important to put these 10 days back in is that is what gets us beyond the 1,100 hours to qualify for not having to make up snow days. So our calendar meets all the minute requirements, so where we do not have to make up snow days.
Well, hopefully our DESI and our government will waive some of this as things
and that's a great
transpire.
point. Yeah.
So if this at least keeps
Especially with
us.
our county being in the code red right now.
The hot spot.
I mean, we might, maybe everybody wouldn't be, but do you think they would ever look back and say, well, hey, when school started, we were
forced basically to push everything back. And is there any way that we can get basically a waiver or forgiveness?
What I did send, Ken Jackson is our area representative from DESI, and so early on they said any calendar changes, please notify him. So I sent him our rationale, I sent him our new start date, and I sent him the supporting documentation saying, here's why we're starting late. And so he said, thank you, I'll make sure the department's aware. So,
I think we keep track with whether, Farmington AV, I don't know if anybody else has announced since then.
Not yet.
If they get any waivers or any.
yeah. And you're right, if you're looking at our county and you see the schools that are doing it, it may make Desi say, wait a minute, this was a hotspot, and they did choose this because of the transmission rate.
Other local schools have an emergency meeting.
They are discussing it.
They wasn't gonna do it, and might maybe doing it now too.
I think our goal, and we don't want to rush anything, I think our goal with this was to provide peace of mind to our teachers that we're not going to ask you to work anything outside your calendar date. It also provides peace of mind to our parents. I did track the comments. Now I can't see everybody who shares the post, but I can see the comments on our post. And really, the majority of them were, does this mean we're going to school in June? And being able to alleviate that concern and answer those questions, I think, is very fair to our patrons and our teachers.
We had an informal vote yesterday. We still need to vote on this as a formal.
I think it'd be great to have a formal, on record.
I need a motion to delay school to the September 8th. I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Do we? And we? Yes. So and we don't have to do it tonight if you're not comfortable. But the board will have to approve the calendar for us to put it into DESI, and so that those are our new days.
But we need to back up on the last motion as well and include the fact that we're going to start in the yellow level on September 8th. Do we need to include that in that motion?
I was thinking, we don't know that. Maybe something would change.
Right.
It wouldn't be a deal.
No, I was going to say.
Yeah. And that's what we're prepared for. But if something changes, we can absolutely modify that at any point in time based on community.
Because I know when we put the plan out, we said it can change basically on a moment's notice depending on the situation.
Yeah.
I just didn't know if we need to change that now.
Yeah. No.
Desi would forgive days when they take them off the back end of it.
So we would try our very best to possibly restore what we had taken away.
Maybe those couple days in March.
Because honestly, if you look at this, the biggest piece is we've taken, and spring break was long anyway because Easter fell at the right time, but we've taken 3 of those days away, and so and we're doing it early enough that way if before they had plans for spring break, which I don't know how many people are traveling now anyway, but it would allow them to change those or cancel to have plenty of notice. So, you guys, any thoughts on that?
No, it's just we will have to also monitor and make sure that we keep a balance at the secondary level. We really have to watch our semesters, make sure first semester is not remarkably short compared to second semester because of those courses that are only a semester long. So sometimes you question why it looks like it does. Second semester is historically longer because we figure in that we will miss some days due to inclement weather. So we will watch that to keep a balance.
Some of those weather days, since we are kind of virtual, so we have our kids, we call it a snow day, but can the teachers that are teaching online, those kids at home, can we not say?
We may start a new trend overall. This may be the end of the traditional wonderful snow days.
If they can
I see
teach
it coming.
If you can teach it online, then we wouldn't have to use a snow day for
Right.
that.
Right.
So
Say this is not a snow day, this is a virtual day.
this is a virtual day.
And there are 2 types of plans. You have an AMI plan, which DESI approves, and you can use that plan to make up 36 hours of snow days by doing virtual or packets. So that's already approved. Then they issued something called an AMI-X plan, and that's basically for intermittent closures because we know those last longer, could last longer than your traditional 36 hours. So they said, hey, fill this out and we'll approve for a year exactly what you're talking about. Okay, we're closed for 10 days here. Well, guess what? We're closed for 10 days here again. So we can continually use that time, and it can be packets or virtual.
Well, they extended already a week, the start of school before this.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard rumors that they were going to do Labor Day and starting next year possibly. Is that true?
They've talked about it because of the tourism.
Yeah.
That's what, and they've even mentioned not only, and it would all come from legislation, right? But not only a start date, but there's even been talk of an end date. So you can't start before here and you can't end after here. And we've joked sometimes that would be good, right? I'm not saying I always agree with it, but okay, you know what you have. You have here to here. You got to get your days in. How do you make that? How do you make that happen?
Wouldn't be moving graduation around.
Yeah, it'd be very, very scary.
So we actually revisit the calendar in September. Anyway.
If you would like.
Or do you want to do that? We could vote on this now if you want to.
Well, or is it going to put, like you say, ease the teachers and staff's mind if we approve it tonight?
I think what makes.
I mean, if we're good with it, you guys have got feedback from it.
Yeah, and I think what makes me at ease with it is we did send it, like I said, to both of our teacher unions and heard from both of them saying, hey, these are reasonable. We understand some things can't be controlled. We wish some things could be changed, but
And
these
it's
are
not like we
both.
couldn't change it if we had to.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
We could go back.
I can tell you right now, they're very concerned. I've heard indirectly.
They're very nervous.
From a bunch of them
They
today.
are.
Yeah.
Wanting to know what we're
Sure.
gonna do about their hours and this kind of
Absolutely.
thing, and when they work, when they don't. So we need to take some kind of an action tonight.
I make a motion to adopt the calendar.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
You know what time we're done? I think we can share that tonight.
Informational items, Assistant Superintendent's report, Jason.
Okay, so I'll try to go quick. On the elementary level, our mantra has been blessed are the flexible, because hopefully you won't break. So we're trying to be as flexible as we can and trying to be as positive as we can as we go through the work. Elementary, they had a number of parents come out for an unconventional open house. It went very well. They did a great job with social distancing. They did a great job of getting people in and moving them forward and through. And I was really pleased with when I went to see the open houses over the last few nights and how everybody pulled together. Talking about volunteering and stepping up, you saw a lot of people doing that. Gave out hang tags, trying to help people be prepared for in-person, virtual, and questions like that. At the primary level, Dr. Lynn wanted to really compliment a few things. Ms. Galzinski, he really appreciates the great job she's been doing. She's really been filling a gap right now, and he appreciates that. She has stepped in as a virtual liaison as well for parent communication to help people that are signing up with virtual, answer questions, coordinating and leading that. Mrs. Sprinkles Gregory was a great help with Google Classroom training. That was very well received, and she put a lot of time and effort into it, and we really appreciate what she did. And can't say enough about Debbie Copeland, Lisa Barnes, Marcia Martin, Rebecca Strawn, the secretaries that worked so hard getting everything ready, and then all those teachers, again, that volunteered, a lot of them, at different nights, because they did multiple nights at primary. So everybody had to work, but then a bunch of people came back and did extra, which we really appreciate to help the two open houses go well. Parkside Element and Intermediate both said the same. The drop-off of supplies went very well, and they appreciate all the people that stepped up. Virtual open houses seem to have gone well too, even though it's a new thing for us. Teachers have been learning a lot about virtual. I want to thank you for approving this, because the 21 hours of PD is going to be very valuable to our teachers over the next 3 days. I want to also, the Parkside and Intermediate in particular, want to thank veteran teachers, because they've been very welcoming to a number of new teachers that they've had in those buildings and how they've helped get everything prepared. And lastly, I already complimented transportation a little bit, so I won't go into that again, but I appreciate how they were flexible in their training and how that all worked, and how Dave Finley and Ed Pryor and Dave Stokes were ready to turn on the dime and get things ready, as well as Cassie Pernod getting everything ready to get the bus drivers ready and as trained as we could in a safe way and ready to go. Whenever that first day is we need to run buses, we'll be ready.
So we, at the secondary level, have done virtual open houses this year. They have been very well received, and very impressed with the staff. They're already working at the secondary level to prepare their virtual classes. They're just a little more used to that system. So there haven't been the poor obstacles that I know elementary teachers are struggling with. And so it's great to have all levels of expertise who can work together to help one another, even at the different levels. Would like to recognize everyone for that, because we have people working around the clock at all different positions within this district to make things safe, secure, to welcome students virtually or face-to-face, whatever has come their way, and it's been pretty stressful. So I appreciate that. Also like to thank the Ministerial Alliance, who is making a $5,000 donation to this district to help buy supplies for teachers, and that is K through 12. That is wonderful. And it probably will be a lot of Clorox wipes and Kleenex, but that's okay. We'll take what we can get, and we really do appreciate that. So would like to thank them. And of course, as we mentioned earlier in the meeting, Farmington will be here for football, maybe, hopefully, next Friday night. And we will have limited tickets, and I know that that is a constraint upon people and our fans, but we appreciate the support and the social distancing. And that's all.
I'm going to echo what Katie and Jason both said. Our staff's done an amazing job. I'm going to start with the staff in here. It's incredibly hard when things change so frequently, and one day you're going, and the next day that you're looking at, okay, we may be closing, we'll be moving, and taking everything in stride and making sure that things are getting done. So just hats off, great work going on. Same in the buildings. It's so exciting to hear teachers and see what's going on. And the hardest part has been the emails of them saying, I just want to see my kids. We know, and we want to make sure it's safe where you can see your kids. And so it's very refreshing, and I think something that's come from all of this is our teachers who work so very hard. Sometimes we're in a place where education isn't always as valued the way it should be, and I think a great thing is I think people really begin to understand the huge role they play, and what an important factor they play in a kid's life. So very excited about getting people back on campus. Like I said, I shared before, we have our PPE inventory. We have that live, so if something's taken from it, you can say, oh, I took this box of 50 masks, and so now I know there's 500 left in stock. And so anybody can see that at any point in time. That way we can always make sure we have plenty of supplies and get things reordered. Tony?
Are we doing a central kind of warehouse?
It's all in one spot, yep.
I didn't know if you were dividing it up and putting it in buildings so that way, if we need it right now, it's there. So
I think we have some in every building. It's just making sure, like you're right, if we need a reorder, let's get it here so we're not without it. Water fountains, those have been an ongoing battle. We did get confirmation today that they will be here Monday. Now, with that being said, we got confirmation 2 weeks ago that they'd be here in 72 hours. And so Tony's done a great job staying on that. Tony's done a great job being aware of it. But his guys, he has told me, once they're here, he will absolutely get them installed. Talk about people working day and night. Those guys are ready to get all those pieces done. Our middle school already has some, but the majority of buildings do not. And so we're just making sure we get those put in place and ready to go. In addition to the county money, DESE has opened up, I think I shared last time we were together, several areas you can get grant money. There's some transportation, there's connectivity, there's devices or other tools. So what it's going to allow for us to do is take some of that grant money that we set aside for Chromebooks, and we're going to be able to partner that with money from DESE for Chromebooks and make that go a little bit further. And then for connectivity, they are really looking for ideas that tackle connectivity that are one-time costs. Because what they heard from people was, hey, if it's an ongoing cost, then you're leaving us with a bill in the future. And so looking at how can we tackle that and help in some ways. So met with Lonnie and really looked at some options. Putting exterior, and that was one of DESE's really big goals, was exterior hotspots on buildings. So we looked at that. There's a couple ways we can do that would allow 150 people to be on at one time and be able to access through that hotspot and do work. The other option that we're really, really strongly looking at, and this is a reoccurring cost, but we really feel like it is one of those costs that is vital, would be turning our buses into absolute hotspots all of the time. And so some people are saying, well, that only helps if you're on the bus. Well, if we go to red and we're already paying people to work, we can put those 30 buses anywhere. We've talked about, already where before we delivered food out at
Lake Timberline.
Lake Timberline, thank you.
Creek, Teradalac, where we delivered out that direction. All of those spots we're paying the bus drivers anyway. We wouldn't want to leave the buses there unsupervised very long, obviously, so they'd be there with them. But we could deliver the food and then have a hot spot where kids could come and work and download what they needed to help.
And in those scenarios, those allow for 128 people to access at one time. In addition to that, through FirstNet, which is who provides our cell phone service, and that is also who provides like police and fire and all of that, you can get individual hotspots, and those are $40 a month. And up to 15 people can get on those. And so it's just having a variety of materials available. And I know within the grant they want to avoid those costs. They said you can do it, but obviously after the year you're responsible for the costs associated with that. It's just making sure we maximize our opportunity to get internet to kids and make sure that they can do their work anywhere.
So they'd have to be on the bus.
They could they'd be just in a range. So like when Lonnie and I talked at the high school, the spot he would consider putting it would shoot all the way across the student parking lot and cover every bit of it. So they could be anywhere there and get access. And then obviously, what we talked about was making sure there's a difference, because I'm learning my tech stuff, between internet access and filtered. And everything we're looking at is filtered. So you would have control of what they could and couldn't get access to and make sure it's safe. So other than that, We're just plugging right along, and things are good.
I guess it'd take too many of those hot spots to get with Ameren and utilize their holes that they have in some of those areas.
That'd be awesome. I mean, we could talk about it and see. Another thing we have is the city wrote a grant. They called me and asked if we could partner in a grant for hotspots, and they're going to have a checkout of hotspots at the Bonterra Library, so kids who need a hotspot can check them out there as well.
People been doing that for a while. They pull up in front of the library and just sit on their laptop and just do stuff there.
Yeah. But I would love to talk about that too.
But I mean, it's something.
I
Same
think
thing
that
with.
we could get Ameren to help us with that.
Yeah.
I mean, when I say that, I'm talking use their crews to put these hot spots up on poles where your everyday hoodlums aren't gonna.
Right, we're not gonna
pull them down.
We're not gonna listen.
Well, and that way we get more kids too, because if the buses are parked during the day, and maybe they don't have.
Great.
I don't know what
Get there
it
till
costs.
the daytime.
Evening.
Or is that something maybe even partnered up with, it's a Grand Sarah. Same thing with the roads, is there a Grand Sarah that they want to do something too?
We can talk and see how, yeah.
If it's feasible on our side.
That's great.
Have you talked to the Terradallac, Goose Creek, and Timberline, their committees? Because they have committees that basically run those. Maybe trying to put something in where they can have some hot spots.
Central locations where they're always there.
Associations,
Yeah.
boards.
That's great.
Well, we're good, Dave, if they don't have underground electric. Some places do.
Right. Right. I had one question going back to the football, we're talking
Sure.
about. I mean, are we curtailing some of the visitors? Are we watching the pregame stuff? I mean, I know the tailgating was a big, are we looking
And keeping them separate?
saying, hey, please don't do it.
Discourage.
Don't do it until we come out of some of this.
Mm-hmm.
I
I
mean,
mean, you're asking for,
it is. It's very difficult
you know,
when you're patrolling adults most of the time, because those are mostly adults.
Yeah.
Well, the only thing is,
But the
that
ticket
tailgate area
limits.
is on our property.
Yes, it
You
is.
can tell them not to do it.
I mean, don't get me wrong, it's not that I don't want to do it.
No, I don't either, and it's hard to.
And they use a lot of that money to support our school. You're exactly right.
It's hard to find a happy
I don't
medium.
want to take it away from
No.
what they're doing.
What Dave's saying too is also one of the things we were talking today, bathroom facilities.
Mhm.
When you have that big crowd, we don't have a great ample and large area to use the restrooms. Are we gonna have sanitizer there? Are we gonna have staff coming in and doing some disinfecting while the game's going on to ensure that we're doing
We'll
our?
have to. And they're, you always think about the lines at the concession stand. I know that's silly, but think about that.
What about
What about the
concessions?
concessions?
Yeah.
That was another question I had.
You know, those are all things that we'll have to work through this week and make arrangements for as to whether you can serve, can you safely serve popcorn? I know that
Or is
sounds
everything
silly,
prepackaged?
but,
I mean,
you know.
when you go to McDonald's, you still have people that are serving stuff and
Yeah.
they're.
There would have to be the limits with the PPE, the gloves, the, masks.
Mhm.
I was thinking the same thing about the hot spots.
Right.
You get kids in a bus, I mean, there's not even a restroom.
Right.
You know,
Right.
and you really need to disinfect the bus, after they, right now you would anyway.
Well, I would think on the bus, and maybe not being on the bus, but actually
Right. They
have
could
the
be
bus.
anywhere
You just
around.
you park it in a parking lot and say, hey, we're gonna utilize the bus as the antenna.
And in the bus model, it can be
Antenna.
hardwired or removable. The hotspot itself.
Volunteerians coming out.
I'm a transient.
Okay, getting board members' reports this week?
And I had a question for Jason. We didn't really hear anything about how summer school ended up being. I mean, it was
Yeah.
kind of one of those things that.
No, sorry. Summer school went very well. Our attendance came out at around, I think it was 87% as we filtered it out overall, which was good. We were.
I mean, did you base that on what the enrollment was when it initially signed up, or just as the enrollment was once you got
That's
going?
Good question. We went with the first few days, we went with the enrollment we had, and then as they went through the first 3 days, then we did drops. We contacted families that, are you sure, for sure not coming? And we based on the enrollment of people that said they were coming. So we went through the 2 weeks. We were able to do a lot of reteaching activities for fourth quarter. We're going to try, obviously we're going to be trying to meet students where they're at when they come back, but we're really, a lot of the best guidance from DESE is not to go back into fourth quarter, not to just say, we're going to do fourth quarter, right. We're going to have to reteach. There's just nothing, but we're going to do our best to try to progress the kids moving forward. I think one of what you said was really true. Virtual instruction is going to look a lot like regular, where we do the PBIS practice those first few days, the first week. So it's going to be very much that virtually logging in. But once we get them going, we're moving on first quarter standards. So summer school gave us a chance to hit those fourth quarter standards, kind of try to make it as fun as possible. Everyone was healthy. That was a good thing. We made it through 2 weeks with everybody being healthy. I'm really glad we did it when we did and not later. And hindsight, you look at it, maybe we should have moved it forward, but you make your decisions with the information you have at the time. But it went well. It went well. We did reduce a little staffing. I communicated you guys with that as we moved along, which we do in summer school regularly anyway. We don't typically reduce buses, but we did this time, which was an obvious need. But it all went very well, and appreciate all the work that everybody did for it.
Summer school almost always drops as it goes along.
It does.
Even in our
I just kept trying to figure out that you were doing your enrollment and your percentages on it, if it's based on who enrolled and what the actual attendance was, that percentage wasn't correct.
Right. We probably had, Dave, somewhere around, and I could pull those numbers back up. I think I shared it with you.
Yeah.
About 40 kids that signed up that didn't, the parents just said, no, we've decided not to. But we serviced over 200 plus students during the whole time of it at that 87% rate. It was at 90 plus as you went through the first few days. And primary was a little higher than Parkside's. I will tell you, like we had one sixth grader. We just didn't get a lot of in that. So, one.
And what about the pre-K enrollment? Where are we at with that?
Good question. We were at 90, Julie, which 90 would have allowed us to maybe start looking at like having a half-day program. But Dr. Lynn, I thought, made a wise choice. He said, I want to do a wait list. And I agree with that, because 80 made us have 4 full days.
Okay.
So if we'd have done 90, we would have been like every single student, no wait list. Well, now with COVID, I had him send me numbers. We're at 72. Okay.
With a wait list?
Well, that's a good question. I asked him that. I said, have we screened everybody on the wait list? He's like, we've screened 6.
Okay.
So we had 10 on the wait list.
Okay.
So the wait list was a good thing. And I'm glad that he said that. And that's what he said. He said, let's go ahead and keep a wait list, because he said a lot of times we end up needing it. And of course, in this situation, what he meant, what it dropped down, it was when we went to yellow. I'm having and I get it, some pre-K parents. I spoke to one on the phone. He spoke to many more, his staff, that are, how does face masks look on pre-K level? How do you do that? Kindergarten and first grade, it's going to be unique enough, but on the pre-K, but yeah, we're pretty good. My glasses are fogging up on me, so here you go. But we have class sizes in pre-K between 17 and 20 right now, with the 72. So okay. It's been good.
Okay. No future agenda items? If none, I need a motion to go out of open session into closed.
I'll make that motion.
Got a second?
Second.
Alan?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Stacy?
Yes.
Chibo?
Yes.
Julie?
Yes.
And yeah, Dave?
Yes.
And yes. Good recording. I'm not used to that.
Hi, Randy, I'm right here.
You're in the audience,
And a big thank you to Jason and Rico.
Yes, thank you guys so much.
That's one of our senior students right now.
Kill it. Awesome.
Before we get started, there are
Kill it. Snacks.
Kill it. I'm just
in the kitchen for everybody to
the close up of Katie right there. And I'm like, it was like right there. I'm like,
She's getting around pretty well.
I did my absolute best to keep you out of the shot.
If there's a profile shot on there. I thought he was gonna have to catch you a while ago.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
Shakes will happen every time.
Oh no, you're fine. It's okay.
It was.
Are you helping
And
up at the
so-
fall football games too?
I was actually about to ask you that.
Derek
Yes.
can
So the
fill
radio
all
station